Welcome to the Buried Treasures podcast, brought to you by Masjid Uthman, where I interview a new guest every week to discover their journey. I'm Hamza Warsi. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulillah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Jazakumullah khairan everyone for joining us. MashaAllah, we have a special guest with us today. He has, if I were to read out his Ijazat, it would take too much time. He is the Don, the king of Bolingbrook. MashaAllah, Mawlana Arif Kamal. Welcome.
Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum. Pleasure to be here.
Alhamdulillah, man. Thanks, Jazakallah khair for making the drive out. I apologize in advance for the miscommunication.
That's no problem.
Alhamdulillah. So, Mawlana, I mean, just tell us a little bit about yourself. We all know you from Bolingbrook Masjid.
Yeah.
And the association there.
Yeah.
You're teaching at Darul Qasim, but I want to know a little bit about yourself before that. Who is Arif Kamal prior to, say, Hibs?
Okay. All right. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Nahmaduhu wa nusalli ala rasulih al-kareem ba'd. So prior to Hibs, the thing is, I don't have any particular connection to scholarship in my family lineage or anything. I was basically the first person to go into the madrasa. So prior to Hifz, I was, doing what what people normally did, which was go to middle school, high school, then college, right? So, before Hifz, I was in high school, I was into sports. Specifically, I was into football and wrestling. That's what I did in high school. But as well, towards my high school years, I started to get into Quran, started to get into the masjid and different activities at the masjid. But prior to that, I was just, I guess, I was a kid who always followed the rules. Right? I just did what my parents would tell me to do. I never tried to do anything that would, displease them. Whatever they told me to do, I would basically do. That's just how we were as siblings. My older brother was a little bit different, though. Anyone knows my older brother knows what I'm talking about. But there's a lot of benefits that I got from my older brother, a lot of things I learned from him. Alhamdulillah. But that's, I never ditched a class in high school.
Man.
I would always hear stories of people doing that in high school. Afterwards, I'm thinking maybe it would have been cool to try that every now and then. But I just was following things to the book, you know what I'm saying? That's just how we grew up. That's what comes to mind right now. If you want me to go into certain things that I did while in high school, when I think about my childhood before Hifz, I mainly think of high school. I was very close to my cousins. We were really close. We would always try to hang out with one another. So even in high school, I didn't really hang out with friends because I always had, alhamdulillah, family. And we would hang out every week. Every weekend, I was over either at their house, they were at my house. And that was, alhamdulillah, a great advantage because I didn't need to make friends in public school. Although, when you're in high school, when you're on the football team, wrestling team, you naturally make friends, even just being in school. But it never occurred to me, okay, let me go hang out with them. Although they would call me and they would tell me to hang out, I just never was interested in that. I always knew, and growing up, I had a strong, I guess my parents raised me where I knew that I was Muslim. I was praying 5 times a day was a very big thing. My father was very big on us praying. I remember when we were growing up, when my father would come home from work, we knew the first thing he would ask us is, did you pray? I've been talking about from when I was very young, 7, 8, from middle school, even before that. We knew the first thing our father's going to ask us about when he comes home is, did you pray? And I remember we would be playing Sega back then, like Sonic the Hedgehog, all those games, So that's back in the day. And we would hear my dad, because my father would come home at different times. He worked for a heating and air conditioning company, so he didn't have a 9-to-5 job. He in the beginning he was working for a company, and then he opened up his business later on. So it was based off of his service calls. So we never knew when he was going to come home, but we knew whenever he did, the first thing he was going to ask us is, "Did you pray?" So if we were playing Sega or whatever, and my father came home, and we didn't pray Dhuhr yet. And he was, Dhuhr, when you put the control down, we gotta go pray. it was like that, and he was, alhamdulillah, Allah Ta'ala, blessed me to have that type of an upbringing. I wasn't into Quran when I was younger. Like, I would give my first teacher was my mother, and I would give my mom such a hard time when it came to Quran. Everyone else would, my other siblings were, if we were playing or doing something and it was Quran time, they would, quietly just go and read. But whenever it came to Quran, for me, it was like, why'd you have to ruin my day? Like, we were playing, we were having fun. Now I got to go read Quran. It was like that. And I would give my mom such a hard time. Like, I would be reading without any energy. I would just, drag along. The other day I was talking to my mom. I was like, subhanAllah, like where you were and like what it is now. Those are things that come to mind. But I feel like having a close-knit relationship with my cousins was very, very important. We were all like centered in deen, alhamdulillah. So when we would get together, we'd always talk about stories. We would have fun. We would chill. We were into, video games. But there was always a point in the gathering where we would talk about deen. For like, even if it was like for 10, 15 minutes, there was something like that. My cousins who lived in Chicago, his dad, their father was praying 5 times a day at the masjid. So, and they would go to the masjid. I would go to the masjid, but I wasn't going 5 times a day. Like, maybe once or twice. I would be going for Jumu'ah, but like just a couple times in the week, really. It was just mainly just make sure you pray. So we were mainly praying at home. Besides, going to the masjid for Quran and things like that later on. But my cousins, their father would pray 5 times. He still prays 5 times in the masjid, mashallah, at the masjid. So they would bring that experience to us. So when we were together, they would always spark the conversations of deen because that's the environment that they were in. And whenever we would go sleep over their house, we knew, okay, Fajr time, we're going to be going to the masjid. Like, we were 11, 12 years old.
Yeah.
And we knew Fajr time, we're going to have to get up and go to the masjid. And I remember back then they had cassettes now. Those are like, just the other day I was looking at my bookshelf and I saw like cassettes. I was like, subhanAllah, these are like relics now. We can't even play them if you wanted to. Cassettes of Qair al-Basit and so on and so forth. So I remember just always going to the masjid, and we would always listen to Qair al-Basit on the way to Fajr. And we would go to Jamia Masjid. Qari Wana would lead the namaz, and would lead the salah, and it was amazing to pray behind him. His Fajr salah was the best. I mean, he would always bust out in Fajr. He would always sound good, but Fajr was special.
Yeah, mashallah.
So we were close. We're still, alhamdulillah, very close as a family. That was very important, I think, like growing up with cousins that we were close with. It really, helped us understand the importance of family, the importance of relationship, not really needing anyone outside of family to connect with, really. It was just the only people I knew were my cousins and my family. That was it. I really didn't hang out with people from high school or middle school or anything like that. We would, talk, but I would never like hang out with them. Yeah. So from that perspective, I was never really influenced by them. I mean, I knew what they were about. I was in the high school football and wrestling team, and my high school was actually in the news for having a party with alcohol. When I was a junior in high school, they were actually caught by the authorities, and it was on the news the next day. And I knew all of those guys. I knew everyone who was there. Yeah. And so those are like the influences that I was around in the beginning. But because my father, taught me you have to pray, I was always around my cousins. It was like we were centered in deen. Anything could be happening, but when it came time for salah, we were going to be praying. I remember there were times where, like in high school, we would have final exams. They would end at like 12, 1 o'clock, and wrestling practice was at 3 o'clock. So I'm like, I didn't have a car, and I couldn't skip practice. I skipped practice once because I thought to myself, I'm just going to go home. Let's miss a practice, whatever. It just so happened a lot of people skipped that day. And that night, my wrestling coach called me. And he was like, he called the house phone, right? It wasn't like we had a cell phone, right? He called my house phone. Yeah. He's like, where were you today? And I'm like, we had finals. I went home. I didn't have a ride back. He's like, why didn't you call me? I could have picked you up. I'm like, I didn't think about that. He said, you're going to be in practice tomorrow? I said, yeah. He said, okay, I'll see you there. It was the toughest practice. Like I had to carry a 25-pound plate, doing stairs, the whole practice. It was a very memorable practice, but it was quite crazy. My teacher, my wrestling coach, was a Navy SEAL, so he was very, very tough. And maybe I'll talk about that a little bit later. But anyway, so one occasion, it was I knew after that, okay, I'm not going to skip practice. I'm going to go to practice, even if finals, if there's a 2-hour gap, I'm going to go to practice. So one of my friends, we were actually pretty close as friends. Like in gym, if you had to have a partner, it was me and him. Like the other day, I hadn't talked to him in like 15 years. Like since high school, and he somehow got my cell phone number and he texted me. It was really interesting when that happens. So I went to his house. He lived right behind the high school, and I remembered. Okay, we were into video games. We would play Madden, and I was thinking to myself, man, it's Asr time is gonna come in. I didn't pray Dhuhr yet, so I'm at his house, right? And I made sure. One thing I would do is I would, like, before leaving the house in the morning, I would be in wudu. I would be in wudu, so if I had to pray, I wouldn't have to redo my wudu. And I would try to keep it as long as I could. If I needed to make it at school, I would. But at this particular day, I kept it. And I was thinking to myself, man, I got to pray. Lord, it's almost Asr, and I'm at my friend's house. He's not Muslim. He doesn't know anything about Salah. So I kind of told him, hey, I got to pray. He's like, you got to pray? What do you mean? I'm like, listen, we pray 5 times a day. You mind if I just stand in that corner for a couple minutes? Then I prayed my Lord Salah, and he would just watch me, and he respected it. He was nice. So those type of values that my parents instilled within me, being around cousins, our relationship was centered in Deen. It's something that's like so valuable, and I'm indebted to my parents for that, really, and my family in general.
MashaAllah.
So yeah.
So you mentioned something interesting.
Yeah.
You said that you were just an average high school kid. You're just doing your thing, and then you got more involved in the masjid. And what changed over there?
In terms of like making an intention to do hifz or something like that? Yeah, so my cousins, as I mentioned, they started to go on Jamaat. And so one day they came to us and they started telling us about Jamaat. And so I said, this sounds pretty cool. I want to come with you. So they're like, okay, next time we go, we'll let you know. Like, all right. And my cousin had just started his hifz. He was maybe like a couple months in, but he was doing it with Qari Manan. So I said, okay, whenever you go, let me know. We'll go together. So he was going, and he called me up, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to come. So I went with him, and it was a special Jamaat that Qari Manan Sahib was taking. And it was only his students. I was like the only non-student of Qari Manan, and they were all like Huffaz. Everyone was Hafiz, or they were a student of Hifz. So being with them for those 3 days really had an impact. Like just being around Huffaz and just seeing the relationship that they had with Qari Manan Sahib. And I remember one time Qari Manan Sahib wanted to spot test them, just give them like a challenge.
Yeah.
And before that, they were like spot testing each other, all Hifz students. So I asked my cousin, what are they doing? He said, one guy's going to read one word and the other person has to continue. I'm like, is that possible? Like he's going to read a few words in the entire Quran, and the other guy's just going to continue from there? He's like, yeah. He's like, that's what we call spot testing. He's going to spot test them. I'm like, really? You guys can do that? He's like, yeah. He's like, look. So they started to do it, and he would give him a few words, and he would continue. I was just so blown away. I was like, these guys can actually read from anywhere in the Quran if you give them 2-3 words. I didn't think that was possible. Right? He was like superhuman to me.
Yeah.
These guys are amazing. And I remember one time Qari Manan was like, I have a spot test for you guys. And I remember I'm talking about, I'm in 8th grade, or I'm in 8th grade and this is happening. So we're talking about like 16 years ago.
Yeah.
But I still remember this. It had that level of an impact. So Qari Manan said, I'm going to give you guys a spot test. They should, sir. He said, Sawkum. He said, Sawkum. They're like, what else? Like, no, that's all I'm telling you. So they're like, Sawkum. they're like, is the word sokum? Or is like, because in Urdu, so means 100, right?
Yeah.
So, or is there like 100 kums and you're telling us to find that?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to tell you. I'm going to give you 5 minutes. You got to figure it out. So I remember all of them opening up the Quran. They were talking to, where do you think this is? And they went in Surah Al-Baqarah. They looked at the longest ayah.
Yeah.
And they started counting. And they're like, it's not this ayah. It can't be this. Okay, he has to have given us a word. And so none of them could figure it out. Then Qarman said, okay, I'm going to have to tell you this. And sure. And then he said, hatta ansawkum. He gave them half of a word. The word was ansawkum.
Yeah.
So he's like, you guys have to work harder. I mean, that really was like one of those experiences. Being around them, Qarman Ansab, the Huffaz, definitely my cousin starting his hifz, which was most probably influenced by going to the masjid continuously with his father, the upbringing, instilling within them the importance of salah. At that point, I made intention. I said, okay, inshallah, I'm going to do hifz. I want to do hifz. I made intention. But I knew, I didn't actually try to pursue hifz at that moment, at that time. I was like in 8th grade.
Yeah.
And I didn't think to myself, or I was in 8th or 9th grade, and I didn't think to myself, let me stop everything that I'm doing right now and just do hifz. I thought to myself, I don't know why, but it's just the plan that came to mind at that moment, which was, let me finish my high school, and then I'll do my hifz. So I kept that intention for about 3.5 years before I implemented it. Within those 3.5 years, there was obviously ups and downs. Ups and downs meaning like it was always in the back of my mind. Okay, inshallah, I'm going to do hifz, because I would see my cousin do it. He wasn't able to finish. Allah Ta'ala, Allah, he's working towards it.
Ameen.
Allah Ta'ala make it easy for him. But going on Jamaat several times after that, and being around Huffaz, I thought to myself, okay, it was just those moments, they really impacted me. Okay, at that point, it was just like, it came to my mind, I'm going to do hifz, and I just tried to preserve it at that moment. It was, so I didn't like have another Jamaat that I went to with Qarman Ansab. I didn't hang around with so many Huffaz after that. It was just, okay, I made this intention. I saw what it was about, and it just mesmerized me. I was just so blown away. I said, okay, I want to do this. And so there are ups and downs meaning at times, the intention would flicker, right? Like it was strong at some points and weak. And it would mainly be weak, not because I didn't want to do it. It was, I remember one time I was walking into my father's office. He had an office for his heating and air conditioning business. And I was walking there and I was thinking, who do you think you are? You think you can do hifz? These people are special. I never had a high opinion of, I still don't have a high opinion of myself, but I definitely didn't have like any type of opinion of myself at that moment, at that time. And so I was thinking to myself, I remember walking and like these thoughts were coming, who do you think you are? You think you can do hifz? These people are special. You don't have any like qualifications for that. You're not smart. You don't have any skills to memorize Quran. So these thoughts are coming to my mind as I'm walking, and I thought to myself, you know what? Maybe that's right. Maybe it's not for me. And then I thought to myself, even if I can't do it, I should make intention. Why? Because if I make intention and I die tomorrow, that's what I was thinking. If I make intention right now and I die tomorrow, inshallah, Allah Ta'ala will raise me amongst the Huffaz.
Inshallah, yeah.
Right? So I thought to myself, the most I can do is make an intention. So at that moment, I thought to myself, I'm going to make this intention and I'm just going to be firm on it. And at that point, that was like a big turning point in me solidifying my intention. Going through that, I guess those whispers from shaitan, and then there's that one idea that you don't know when you're going to die, right? You have intention right now to memorize hifz. When you're done with high school, that's not for another 3 years.
Yeah.
Right? So what if you die in those 3 years? You left your intention, now you don't get the virtue. So just make the intention. If the opportunity presents itself, inshallah, you can act upon it. And so that's kind of like, that's what I did, alhamdulillah, from fadl of Allah. I kept that intention for about 3 years, and it was just, from Allah Ta'ala's mercy, I just was firm on it. And I tried to hold on to it and stick to it, and not let myself be deterred. So after that moment, though, that was like when I was a freshman in high school. I remember that happening, and
Yeah.
I didn't memorize until after I graduated. But after that moment, and after like those whispers and me telling myself that, I never had any doubt anymore that okay, whether I should do it or not. I just made that intention. I stuck to it.
So then after high school, you immediately went into memorization.
Right. So right after I finished high school, I finished high school early. So I kind of planned for it. I finished high school early. I graduated a semester early. I wanted to graduate a year early, but I remember I was trying to just skip the whole senior year and graduate early. But there was one class I needed to take, and I was like, man, I should have took this like earlier. I met with my counselor like the year before, and she said, you know, you have to take this one class, so you can't graduate the whole year. You have to stay one whole semester because of this one class. I said, subhanAllah, I wish I would have done my homework earlier. So I said, okay, all right, fine, whatever. So I finished the semester, and then I left for him.
Where did you go for Hibs?
So when I first made intention for Hifz, I was living in Addison, and the nearest masjid to me was IFS. So I first decided to go to IFS. And when I went there, you know, I had never studied tajweed formally. So I just thought, okay, I'm just going to go and start memorizing.
Yeah.
That's it. You know, just for day one, just memorize. There's no like prep to that. So I went and I recited, and the teacher said, no, you got to work on your tajweed. I said, what is this tajweed thing? What is he talking about? So he said, you know, it's gonna take you some time. So I was there for like a week or two, about if I remember correctly, maybe 1 week or 2 weeks. And he was just telling me, you know, you need to improve your tajweed. It may take you a couple months before you're ready for him. At that moment, I found that very discouraging. So I said, I gotta find a different place. And I had known about IIE. Mawlana was very well known at that time. My father had worked with Mawlana. He did the air conditioning for IIE at that time, so he knew about him. And I would remember him say positive things about Mawlana. Like he had a lot of like bad experiences with masajid. Like they just wouldn't pay him, right? But he said he would always tell me that Mawlana is a man of his word. Like he's someone who, you know, he says when he makes an agreement, he follows through. And I just remember those words, him saying that. So I knew about Mawlana, I knew about IIE. And interestingly enough, like during those days when I was when I graduated from high school until I got to IIE, I had bumped into Hafiz Ali multiple times, like a couple times. Just random places, right? So we had bumped into him. I remember once, me and my cousins, we were having a debate. We were going to the masjid for salah because we had slept over.
Yeah.
And you sleep over there, so you're gonna go to the masjid for every salah. That's how it was. So we were going to salah for Zohar salah or Asr salah, and we were debating about the hukm of the beard, whether it was wajib or sunnah. So someone was saying it's wajib, someone was saying it's sunnah, whatever. So I remember after salah, we didn't know like who he was. We saw that guy has a beard and it's pretty long. Let's go ask him. He's got to know the answer. He's got to be some knowledgeable guy. And it turned, and that was Hafiz Ali.
Yeah,
we didn't know, so we went to him. We asked him, and he gave us the answer, and immediately he started to encourage us to go to IIE.
He's tashkiling you right away, man.
Right away, like no delay. Right?
Yeah.
So we meet up for the first time, and he tells us, you know, you guys are asking this question that's pretty good. You guys should learn Quran.
Classic.
Right.
MashaAllah, man.
So he gave us some information, and that was that. And then I remember going to IFS for Janaza, and I bumped into him then. Just randomly, and he had brought in his class with him. And so I thought to myself, okay, IFS doesn't seem like it's working out. I'm going to check out IIE. I've heard so much about it. It's a pretty well-known school here in Chicago. Let me go check it out. So I went there. I went there, I met Mawlana Ubaidullah, and he he said, okay, if you're going to join, you're going to be in this class. So I walked into the class and he was Hafiz Ali. I was like, oh, I've seen you before. I've seen you. So he introduced, I had found out about the schedule beforehand that, okay, they finish at like 12. They have a morning class from 8 to 12, and then they have a night class. So I decided to come and go at the end of the class. So I went there right before the class finished, and I just sat down with Hafiz Ali, and that was an interesting conversation. But so at that moment, I felt okay. This is where I want to be. I sat down with him. He asked me certain questions, and he said that, okay, before you, and in my mind, I'm still again just trying to memorize. Like, I left IFS because the teacher told me you're gonna have to spend a couple months on learning tajweed, right?
Yeah.
So I was basically trying to escape from tajweed to memorize Quran, right? Just to get right into it. So Hafiz Ali said, "Well, how's your tajweed?" I said, "I think it's pretty good."
You're telling Hafiz Ali this.
At that moment, like, I didn't know what I was doing. So I said, I think it's pretty good. And I told him, like, at that point, like I said, I didn't know too much about like adab, and I mean, I was respectful, but I didn't know like what would be crossing the bounds. Like,
Yeah.
You can cross the bounds, but still not be like super disrespectful, right? Like, I was just trying to be forward. So he said, "What are your goals?" And I said, my goal is to memorize Quran, inshallah, in 2 years. And then move on to go to college. At that time, I wanted to be an accountant. So I was into math, and I thought, okay, I want to be an accountant. So my goal is to memorize Quran for 2 years, and then go to college and pursue becoming an accountant. So he said, okay. All right, so at that point he asked me, okay, how's your tajweed? He wanted to see would I be able to start right away, or would that take time? Because some of his students, I remember some of my classmates, like Mawlana Muhi now, who is at Darul Qasim. I remember he was very young when he was started his hifz, but he actually was doing nadhara for 6 months with Hafiz Ali.
Oh, mashallah.
So that was, I didn't know about that until later on. So I was worried about like spending a couple months, right? Here, I found out after, it's like, well, he had spent 6 months just like getting until he was ready to start hifz at the standards of Hafiz Ali. And other students took a similar amount of time. I found out all of this afterwards, right? But at that time, I'm telling Hafiz Ali, right? I'm saying, I want to memorize Quran in 2 years, and I plan to go on to college. And he asks me, how is my tajweed? I said, my tajweed is pretty good, but I don't need to know. So I don't need to learn tajweed. I just want to start. And I felt like I could talk to him like this because I had met him a couple times earlier. So I had this like friendly relationship at that time. So he said, okay, fine. He said, why don't you grab the mushaf there? And so I said, okay, fine. So I grabbed the mushaf, and he said, why don't you read? And he first asked me to read from the beginning of Surah Al-Baqarah. I thought, perfect. Like, this is a little bit fluent for me. It's fluent for everyone. Right? So then he opens the mushaf to the beginning of Surah Al-Baqarah, and he's like, read. I thought, okay, perfect. I don't think I should stutter too much here. Then he said, okay, wait, no. This is going to be too easy. Then he flipped the pages. I was like, no. So he asked me to, I still remember, he asked me to read from وَبَشِّرِ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. So I read the first half line, and he was just observing. He wasn't correcting me. So I read about like maybe 3/4 of the first line, and I said, how am I doing? Because I thought I was doing good. I said, how am I doing? And he said, you've made about 7 mistakes so far, but keep going. I'm like, oh my God. I said, okay, all right. I guess I'm not going to be able to escape tajweed. I got to surrender. And at that point, he said, okay, when are you going to come next? I still remember these details. It was a Wednesday. And anyone who does hifz, like it becomes, I mean, I know students at IIE, when they're doing hifz, and I was in the same era as Qari Usman Sharif, and we had like classmates like Hafiz Bashir, others, Mawlana Asif, Mawlana Kamil. We're all there together. Those days in IIE were some of the most memorable days of our lives. It was like the most enjoyable time. And so we remember all of these things like vividly. The other day, like Hafiz Bashir, mashallah, who was my classmate, we're talking about stories from like 15 years ago or
Yeah,
whatever.
mashallah.
He just messaged me the other day, like, hey, you remember what Hafiz Lee used to say this when we were in hymns? Literally, just like the other day.
Yeah,
We still remember these, we still talk about those days. So like we remember these things vividly. I remember it was a Wednesday and he said, when are you gonna come next? I said, I'll come tomorrow. I'll start tomorrow. Bismillah, inshallah. He said, okay, all right, cool. So I went home and I thought to myself, it's a Wednesday. Why not just start from the beginning of the week? Like, why not just take a couple days off?
Yeah.
Right? Just take a couple days.
Diet starts
Like,
Monday.
Just start Monday. And I thought, if I'm going to be, inshallah, doing like this routine for a couple years at least, you can just take a couple days off, relax, just mentally prepare yourself, and then start. So I remember I asked my mom. I said, I told the teacher I was going to be there tomorrow, but do you think I should start Monday? She said, if you're comfortable with Monday, that's fine. And my mom, was like the biggest influence for me in Quran. Like I owe everything to my mother. I didn't mention that part of. I mentioned it a little bit, but there were some other things as well. But I owe everything to my mother. Like there's some like experiences that I had, even in her dreams, and inshallah, I'll give all the reward to my mother. She was like the main influence. Alhamdulillah. So I asked my mom, I said, do you think I should just go tomorrow? I told him tomorrow, and I don't have his number to call him.
Yeah.
Or should I go on Monday? She said, whatever. She said, I think Monday sounds good. I said, all right, fine. So I didn't go the next day. And I went Monday. And apparently he was very excited for me to come. And he bought Hafiz Lee had brought many books to introduce me to Tajweed. And the students told me. So they told me that when he came down, because he lived at IIE at that time. When he came down, he had this bag of books, and he was really excited to introduce me to Tajweed. And he looked around, and I wasn't there. Right? So it was very disappointing to him. Yeah. So Thursday, Friday, then Monday, I come, and I walk into the class. I'm thinking, okay, he's gonna be happy. I'm here, and I'm happy that I'm here. He comes in. I come to class on Monday, and he's disappointed. He gives me this look. I'm like, oh man, he's upset I didn't come on Thursday. Yeah. So I went up to him. He said, where were you Thursday? I said, I just wanted to take some extra days off. And as a teacher, when you hear that from a student, it comes off as, okay, this person's not very dedicated. They said they're going to come tomorrow. They're going to start hifz tomorrow, and they're not very dedicated. So he told me at that time, I've never seen anyone start hifz like this and be successful. He said that to me at that time. And in my mind, I'm thinking, not as in an arrogant way or anything, just I had a very firm intention to finish my hifz. At that mind, in my mind, when he said that I've never seen anyone start their hifz this way and be successful, I thought to myself, well, I'm going to be the first one then. That's the thought that came to my mind. I didn't say that to him, but I was like, inshallah, I'm here, and I'm here to stay, inshallah. I want to memorize. That's how it all started.
Mashallah. Yeah. So you mentioned something very interesting and kind of briefed over it. Your mother being one of the main influences in your decision to go do hifz. Can you expand a little bit about that?
Well, I wouldn't say my decision to do hifz, but in my building a connection with the Quran. Like I mentioned, when we were younger, she was our hifz teacher, or our Quran teacher. So I remember we learned the qaida from her. We began learning Quran from her. We memorized surahs from her. And I would just give my mother such a tough time. Everyone, when it came to Quran, to do Quran every day, they would read and they would do their lesson and then move on. But I would just give my mom such a hard time. Mom, come on. Quran, why do you have to do Quran like that? And then when I would actually go and read to her, I was with such low energy, a frown, and just if I'm reading the alphabet, and then she's just read. So I remember so in my mind, I'm thinking, and my mom would be disappointed, very disappointed that I would react that way when it came to reading Quran, and I could tell this is very disappointing to her. Mm-hmm. But it happened for many years, until one year, and I was older at this time, So I know, like, you have students or like these amins, right, where kids finish their Quran when they're 10 years old or 8
Yeah.
years old. One of my brother-in-law's son, mashallah, Allah ta'ala, raised amongst the Huffaz, Urwa, he just finished reading the Quran, and I believe he was like 7, 8 years old, right?
MashaAllah.
So I was 13 years old and I hadn't even finished reading the Quran once, right? I
Yeah.
was like just very disconnected. Like I said, I would give my mom such a hard time. And I was in the beginning of the Quran, like maybe like the third or fourth juz.
Mhm.
And I remember once, a while ago, I was at the masjid and there was someone just randomly talking to us. And he mentioned one point, and he said that, a person should at least finish the Quran by the time that they're 14. Like,
Mhm.
you shouldn't go past 14. If you're 14 and haven't finished the Quran, then there's a problem.
Mhm.
So I don't remember even who that was, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes you say, I don't remember who that was. I don't remember even when it was, but those words just stuck to me. So I was 13 and I was giving mom such a hard time. And my mom went to Pakistan to do something for for a month.
Mhm.
And I thought to myself, you know what? In this month where my mom's gone, I'm going to finish the Quran. I'm going to
MashaAllah.
read the entire Quran. I'm only on like the second or third juz.
Mhm.
I'm going to read the entire Quran and my mother's going to be very happy with me. Like,
Mhm.
in all of these years, I read like 2 juz. And now in like 1 month, I'm going to read 28 juz, something like that. And I thought to myself, mom's going to be ecstatic. She's going to be so happy with me. When she was. But that time period when, and my intention was obviously with Quran, but for my mom not to be disappointed at me and my relationship with the Quran. So it was like, I knew if I wanted to make my mom happy, one thing I had to do was read the Quran and like be more fluent and just be better at it and even finish. Everyone else had finished reading the Quran. I was the only person in the family who hadn't finished. I mean, that's how far behind I was. So, and just something just clicked. In that 1 month, it just was my mission to read the Quran. So what happened was, both my parents went to Pakistan, and so me and my siblings, we would go and we would stay at some of our cousins' houses, like a week here, a week here, a week here, like that. And it was summer breaks. So it was like the funnest time for us. It was amazing. We're just with our cousins,
Just hanging out.
just hanging out, just chilling. So, but I thought to myself, I have to finish the Quran. And to me at that time, reading a juz of Quran would take maybe like a couple hours. I was very, very slow.
Mhm.
And my cousin, I still remember, Farhad, my cousin, he said, whenever I would want to read Quran, I would tell him, listen, I'm not just going to read Quran because I'm probably making a lot of mistakes. I need you to sit next to me and correct me wherever I make mistakes.
Mhm.
And so whenever I read Quran, you're going to sit next to me and we're going to read together. I'm going to read and you're going to make sure I'm not making any mistakes. And so we did that for like many, many weeks. And whenever I was with him, he would sit down, he would be patient. He never was like, let's go watch a movie or let's go do this.
Mhm.
When I wanted to read Quran, he would just sit with me and he would correct me. And we would sit there for like hours. It just, in my mind, I thought to myself, I have to finish the Quran, right?
Mhm.
So I had no like inclination to the Quran, but my mother went to Pakistan, like, I have to make her happy. I need to read the Quran in order to do that. So it was my mission. And I remember when I stayed at my other cousin's house, I had my aunt sit next to me and listen to me read the Quran to make sure I wasn't making any mistakes. And alhamdulillah, before my mother returned, I finished the Quran.
MashaAllah.
And at that point, from the fadl of Allah, after spending that much time with the Quran, you can say that summer was the life-changing summer for me. It was like, once I had experienced the Quran like that, like hours sitting, like I'm talking about a free time I had. Like some of my cousins were playing video games. I'm like, okay, I gotta read the Quran. Like,
MashaAllah.
it was after spending so much time like that, it was just, I couldn't finish and be like, okay, that's it. No more reading Quran. Okay, just whenever. Like, no, I gotta keep reading Quran. So even when my mother came back, she was very happy. I thought to myself, I got to keep reading. Like, I'm not just gonna stop reading now.
Yeah.
So I would make it a habit every night to read. And one thing I would do was, next to my bed, I had a desk, and I would place the Quran right on the edge of the desk, right next to my pillow. So my bed is here, the desk is here, and I'll put the Quran on the edge of the desk, and right next to it is my pillow. So if ever I wanted to sleep, and I didn't read Quran that day, I would see the Mus'haf and I would feel guilty. How could I spend the whole day and not read Quran? So it was like a technique. I did that on purpose. I put it there as a means of reminding myself that if the whole day goes by and I haven't read Quran, well, I better read before I go to sleep. And so it was like a technique that I like used, and it worked. Alhamdulillah, for the love of Allah, every night I would read Quran for like 15 minutes, 20 minutes.
MashaAllah.
And eventually I had a routine where I would, exercise. I would just do sit-ups before going to sleep. Like me and my cousin, all of us were into like sports. And my other cousin, who would sit next to me when I would read Quran, he was in the wrestling team. I was in the wrestling team at the same time. He was 1 year older than me. So we had this, we would discuss, and he would tell me I'm doing sit-ups before I'm going to sleep. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna start doing sit-ups before I'm going to sleep. So I would do sit-ups and I would be very tired. And I'm like, man, today I just want to sleep. I just want to go to sleep. But I would think to myself, man, you can do sit-ups. The Quran is there. You can't read Quran. You're going to choose sit-ups over Quran. So I'm like, all right, fine. I'll spend 10 minutes. So I would spend 10 minutes and then
How old are you around this time?
I'm like 14 years old,
MashaAllah.
15 years old. Like, yeah, that's what, this was happening at that time. And I mean, like that, it was just, I started to spend the summer trying to memorize whatever I could. And I was still not very fluent at reading the Quran. So I remember I would go to the Addison Masjid during the summer and just in the morning hours, just go and memorize. Then I'm talking about not really memorize Quran. I'm talking about just the last 10, 15 surahs. I'm still at that. I'm still 14, 15 years old and still trying to memorize the last 10 surahs in the Quran, the last 15, 20 surahs. I'm still on the furthest I've gotten is Surah Al-Kafirun. I still don't even know Surah Al-Ma'un. I'm like there. I'm like beginner.
Yeah.
Right, like that. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to go in the summer and I'm going to start memorizing just some of these surahs. And I remember Surah Humazah gave me a really tough time. Every surah I would read, I'd pass by. I failed Surah Humazah maybe 5 times before I passed. And then, I would go into the Addison Masjid to read Quran. And one day, my teacher asked me, I guess I was getting a little bit better or more fluent. He asked me, would you like to be Hafil? And I thought to myself, what did you say? He said, would you like to be Hafil? I'm like, me memorize Quran? I have no connection with the Quran. I can barely read. He's asking me if I want to be Hafil. And I thought to myself, well, saying yes is not really it costs nothing. Sure. I didn't even it wasn't even, I was just I just felt like saying no was disrespectful.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? What is it gonna cost me to say yes? I mean, I'm not gonna just start full time tomorrow.
Yeah.
So it's let's see. I said, sure, yes. Let's see where this goes. So he said, okay, fine. And then he, would tell me you have to memorize Quran. I would come and I would read, and he would give me some small points to read. I was ayat to memorize. Sorry, and that it just slowly built. I remember I just started to build this connection to the masjid where I just wanted to be in the masjid. And I remember my mother would go to Jewel, and we would pass the Addison Masjid on the way, and I would just tell my mom, why don't you drop me off to the masjid and go do your grocery, then come back and pick me up. And I would just enjoy being in the masjid by myself. I would like that. I would enjoy that. And I would tell my mom to do that because I knew it would be empty and I just wanted to be there. So I would go there, I'd be empty. And I remember there was a bookshelf there, and I was picking up there were some books there, and I kept picking up different books, and I read on the title, the author of the book was Arif. The name was Arif Billah, and it was Shah al-Kimaktar Sahib, rahimahullah. But each book he had written, and I'm thinking this is a different author, right? So he's I don't know what Arif Billah means at that time, right? So I pick up a book. This guy's name's Arif. I pick another book. Man, this guy's name is Arif. I pick up 5, 6 books. Yeah. And the entire time thinking it's a different person. And all with my name, writing books on Islam. I'm like, man, because my name has a responsibility. Man, I better at least memorize Quran.
MashaAllah.
I remember like in the at the bookshop. I remember that happening when I was by the bookshelf. I'm taking out all these small things like in between like going on Jamaat and making tension when I was a freshman until I actually started. Like these small things contributed to just me being more firm in my intention.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah. So, I mean, you mentioned a few times, like, you know, you and your family would, between you and your cousins, you guys would do sit-ups, push-ups. You know what I'm saying? You guys would keep healthy, keep active. You're on the wrestling team. So who would win in a wrestling match? You or Sheikh Saad? Because Sheikh Saad was also a wrestler.
Yeah. Sheikh Saad, he's a big guy.
You're just going to be like, yeah, man, he can handle it.
He's just a big guy, mashallah.
Yeah, mashallah. So, Monday, you walk into IAE, you meet with Hafiz Ali, and he asks you, you know, why you didn't come, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
How was that first instance, you know, sitting down with him and finally opening up the books of Tajweed?
Yeah. So what ended up happening was we didn't open up books. He just he would tell me, okay, take some notes. I'm going to teach you.
Okay,
so he actually just decided to teach me like hands-on without reading books. So we would go through some surahs and he would teach me. And from the fadl of Allah, he would tell me, you know, you're picking up pretty quick. He would tell me, you know, I feel like Allah Ta'ala is helping you. And so like after 3 weeks, I began my memorization of the Quran.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so alhamdulillah, from the fadl of Allah. So, and he told me at that time, like that was the fastest anyone had started his with him. But it was just like that, like just keep. I just kept at it. But Hafiz Bashir was, and all my classmates were just like amazing. They were very encouraging, very helpful. Hafiz Mujtaba, he was also like, he was at that time when I first came into the classroom, he was like, you know, at that time there was like the most senior student and who was just known to be, I guess, the leader of the class, or like the leader of the class. That Hafiz Mujtaba was that person when I came to Hafiz Lee's class. So we would talk, and the classmates helped me a lot. Alhamdulillah. I felt like at that point in time, IE was the best place to memorize Quran. There were a lot of students who were around my age who were memorizing Quran. A lot of students who were older, like college students around that age, and it was just it's amazing days, man.
MashaAllah. Yeah. You went to IE. Were you dorming or were you commuting back and forth?
I had an uncle and aunt who lived very close, about maybe a 4 or 5 minute drive from IE. So I would stay with them.
Okay.
I stayed with them basically for about 7 years or six years. So I would spend the entire day at IE and then I'd go over there to sleep. I mean, I would eat and sleep, wake up, have breakfast, and go to IE.
Okay.
So nice. I was spending the entire day at IE, but I wouldn't sleep there, so I wasn't dorming there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you're going through, let's say after 3 weeks, you start the memorization. How was it? Was it everything you ever imagined? Like, you know, you wanted to go and just jump into the memorization initially, and now you're given the green light. You know, how was that feeling?
It was good. I had classmates who were very, very encouraging. The first, sabak I was given was 3 lines, and I thought to myself, like, is this normal? And my classmates were like, everyone starts with 3 lines. Yeah. Like, all right.
Just making sure.
Just making sure. Right? And then slowly moved up to 5 lines. And by the time, you know, it was good because I would just read, take in from the experience of the other students, talk to them, how their hifz went and what they were doing in the beginning of their hifz. Just learn lessons from them, see what their experience was like, and compare it to mine to make sure I wasn't like lagging behind, or to see if there was anything else I needed to do. So it felt good that after 3 weeks I was able to memorize Quran. And in the beginning, of course, it's slow and you're completely dependent on the teacher. Like in the beginning, without the teacher, you can't really move forward. Yeah. So it does require some patience. And the classmates would encourage me, you know, don't worry. Like it'll take a month or a couple weeks and you'll be just like us. Nice. Like, you know, revising, reading. Even though you're not sitting in front of the teacher, you're still technically progressing and moving forward. So they would tell me, you know, just... just be patient, just follow the instructions of the teacher, and you'll be okay. So it felt good, and like having the classmates that I did was very nice. Adnan Qazi, I remember him.
MashaAllah.
Like your classmates are people who you remember for a really long time.
Yeah.
So just that environment at IE was the perfect place.
MashaAllah.
So
was there ever a time, or did you ever reach any roadblocks during your memorization?
In the beginning, I didn't know that there was such a thing of a person making an intention then quitting. I didn't know that there was like a phenomenon of somebody quitting hifz until like I had intention for 3 years. Right before I was about to start, I started to hear about people quitting. And my cousin who began in his hifz also wasn't able to continue because he wanted to study, and he only had he only decided to take off 1 year to do whatever he could and then move forward. But so he didn't necessarily quit. He just did whatever he could in the time that he had. But I would hear about other students quitting. I remember my first day in hifz, they were talking about a student who had quit. So the day I got there, they were talking about someone who had quit, and I didn't know anything about that before then. But when I would start to hear about it, I would tell myself, if I ever quit, I would never forgive myself. I just made that promise to myself. And it was obviously we're grateful to Allah Ta'ala. I would read different things, and I did some like research about hifz before starting hifz, and about what it takes. And a lot of the articles I would read that written by ulama would always start off by anyone who memorizes Quran, that's from the fadl of Allah. That's from Allah Ta'ala, like showering that person with His grace. So I would make dua, I really hope I'm one of those people. Like I would tell myself that, and I would make that dua, Ya Allah, allow me to be amongst one of those people who the ulama are describing right now. So everything, we're obviously grateful to Allah, but Allah Ta'ala uses like different people, different tools to get you to where He eventually plans for you to go. And therefore, I do attribute some of that to this may sound weird, to my wrestling coach, who was a Navy SEAL and was all about just being mentally tough. And anytime anything was difficult, just getting through it and just focusing on the goal, regardless of the difficulty that you endure on the way. And there were many lessons that I learned from him. And I even gave him da'wah.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah.
I remember once I was disqualified from a wrestling match for having a beard. It was a small beard, very like barely anything there.
Yeah.
And I was disqualified. I'm like, what is this? But the next match I was able to wrestle. I was like, what's wrong with that referee? This is all like pre 9/11, where like all this is like unusual. So I remember once my wrestling coach would ask me, I was just about to go. It was my time to, I was the next person to wrestle, and he begins asking me, now tell me, why do you have that beard? Like I'm giving him da'wah and I'm the next person to wrestle. So like, and he was very into Islam. I make dua that Allah Ta'ala give him hidayah. We had a lot of conversations that I hope, hopefully inshallah Ta'ala grant me that. But he was like very, like, and if you know about Navy SEALs, you research Navy SEALs, they're very tough. And to become a Navy SEAL, you have to be very mentally tough, right? They go through some really rigorous training. So he would bring that into the wrestling training. And like it gave us goals where failure was not an option. Before then, I was like, anytime something would become difficult, I would just quit. But when I started to train with him, like quitting is not an option, because if you quit, it's going to be worse. Like you want to run stairs and you have 30 seconds left and he tells you better go full speed. Otherwise, I'm going to add a minute. You're going to go full speed because you don't want that extra minute, right?
Yeah.
So it was like, so when I began hifz, it was like I had the mentality where I was like, I'm going to do this, inshallah. Like I made intention, and I told myself, I would never forgive myself if I quit my hifz. I told myself that internally, that if I quit, I will never forgive myself. So I never let any like doubt creep into my mind. I mean, not me, actually, from the fadl of Allah. We're grateful to Allah Ta'ala that He allowed that to happen. Like I'm nothing, right? So I'm grateful to Allah Ta'ala that He allowed for no doubts to creep into my mind, despite seeing people start and quit after having begun hifz. So from that perspective, I didn't have roadblocks. And additionally, like my classmates, my core classmates who I was with, we all finished together.
MashaAllah.
So in my core classmates, Hafiz Bashir, Adnan Qazi, Omar Osman,
MashaAllah.
Razan Mateen, Mawlana Muhi, others, we all finished. So it's like, okay, these people who you're with, who you're doing hifz with, they're moving forward.
Yeah.
And they never talked about quitting. So it's not really like, I can't even say like it's something that, like, it's not even only mental toughness, right? And not that I have that. I attributed the initial intention to that, telling myself before all of this that I cannot quit. I have to start, I have to finish. And otherwise I'll never forgive myself. In addition to that, I remember when I was leaving my home for the first time, my father told me, you know, you're memorizing, you're beginning to memorize, you better finish. Like you cannot quit. I'm not gonna allow you to quit. My father told me that when I was first in the okay, that was also there. And then having the set of classmates that I did, we all finished together. And eventually it was all of those things, from the fadl of Allah, really contributed to finishing. So they never talked about it being difficult. They never talked about or entertained the thought of quitting. They never talked about quitting. So it was like, for me at that time, I never thought about it, and they never thought about it, from what I could tell.
Yeah.
If they did, they didn't mention it. I didn't hear about it.
Yeah.
Like, we were like spending day and night with each other, because they were like Mawlana Muhi or Razan. They were like spending all day at IIE and then going home in the evening.
They live fairly close.
Right.
Yeah.
So I never would hear them talk about quitting. And we would see people finishing like, occasionally. So that was also very encouraging. So like all these things combined from the fadl of Allah, that didn't really happen.
MashaAllah. So it took you, within the 2 years that you set your target goal, you were able to complete your memorization?
From the fadl of Allah, I was able to finish in a little bit over 2 years, like 2 years and a month, 2 years and 2 months, something like that.
Okay, mashallah. So how much did you accomplish during your first year?
First year, I only memorized 7 juz. And I remember one of my classmates, Adnan Qazi, mashallah, he told me, write down how many juz you've memorized. He would tell me the day that you start your hifz, write it down. Because everyone writes it down, and I would write it down. And then he would tell me, you know, after your first year, write down how many juz you did. So I did that. I remember like the first year I did like 7 juz or something like that, like 7.5 juz. And then he would tell me, I remember he told me, okay, don't worry, 7 juz first year, that's actually pretty good. Many people double or triple that in the second year because you move much quicker. And he would tell me, I mean, he had experience. He says, you know, you're doing 1 page, you're going to be doing much more later on. Like, that was very encouraging, right? So, so my first year I did 7, and second year, alhamdulillah, I was able to do the rest.
MashaAllah. So tell me about when you were on, say, your last 5 juz. And, you know, what was the motivation, the drive leading up to reciting your final lesson? At
that time, the last 5 juz, you're basically waking up and the only thing on your mind is memorization. Right? So at that point, I remember when I got to Surah Safat, and I was reciting to Hafiz Ali, and I recited the ayah, فَإِذَا نَزَلَ بِسَاحَتِهِمْ فَسَاءَ صَبَاحُ الْمُنذَرِينَ. He told me, I still remember these things. Every Hifz teacher, every Hifz student will remember this about their teacher.
MashaAllah.
I remember that he told me when I recited that ayah, he said to me, it was at this point, Hafiz Ali told me, he said, it was when I got to this ayah that I realized, man, I'm close to finishing. Hafiz Ali said that about himself when I was reciting it to him. That I thought to myself, that means I'm close to finishing.
I'm not that far away, man.
If you had that thought, maybe I should have that thought too. I didn't even think about like finishing, but I thought, you know, I am pretty close actually. Only like 6-7 juz away. So at that point, it's like, you're only like, okay, inshallah, let's figure out how to finish. And at the end, I saw this with my classmates. You pretty much wake up and decide how much you want to memorize. You want to memorize 5 pages, you're memorizing 5 pages. You want to memorize 7 pages, 7 pages. You want to memorize half juz. So it's just like you're revolving your entire day around like this goal of memorizing and getting closer to finish. So the last 5 juz, you're just waking up and you're just focusing on, okay, I got to get my revision done and let me start my memorization so I can meet my goal. So that's how like the last 5 juz were. Is just at day nights we were just memorizing. Just like I knew how long it would take me to memorize a page.
Yeah.
And it would take, even at the end, like I would hear stories, people would say, then it takes like 15 minutes, 20 minutes to memorize a page. Like, how come that doesn't happen to me? How come that doesn't happen to me? It would still take me like 45 minutes, an hour to memorize a page, right?
Yeah.
Because I was memorizing it to where, I mean, it would just take that long. And also I would try to memorize it where when I'm finished with the page, I could recite it again right away. Not like I have to rememorize it. Because I knew if I don't memorize it like this, tomorrow when I have to recite, I'm going to put myself in a bad position.
Yeah, definitely.
Right? So I better make sure if I'm doing like 4 or 5 pages that at the end of each page, it's pretty strong where I can recite the whole thing right away. So like that, it would take about 45 minutes. So you just set blocks for yourself. Okay, from 9 to 10, 1 page, 10 to 11 break, 11 to 12, another page, 12 to 1 break. So you just set blocks like that and you just try to be disciplined and follow that schedule that you set for yourself.
MashaAllah.
That's like how the last 5 just go. You set these like times and just follow through.
You're memorizing. Now you're at the finish line.
Right.
Like it's like, what's that experience reciting to your teacher your final lesson?
It's very surreal. You've been thinking about that. So for me, when I began memorizing hifz, I thought to myself, man, I can't wait for the day that I finish, inshallah. Like I'm looking forward to that day. And so when it's there, you're just it's very surreal. I remember my parents. It was the first time I saw my father cry.
Oh, mashallah.
It was the first time I saw him cry. He actually like had tears in his eyes. I was like, oh wow, mashallah. It was just surreal. I saw how happy my teacher was, how happy my parents were, and you just ask Allah Ta'ala to accept it. It's very difficult to describe that feeling. Because it's different. It's different than like accomplishing anything in this dunya. Right? Like when you accomplish something here, there's satisfaction, there's happiness, but it's not the same thing for when you're accomplishing something, inshallah, for the hereafter. There's a different feeling of contentment and happiness. It's like, inshallah, this happiness is for something you built to be everlasting, right? Inshallah, Allah Ta'ala accept. That it's similar to when a person finishes Ramadan, that happiness that they get right into Ramadan, you can't really describe it. It's alhamdulillah, you got through. You memorized. You fasted all of Ramadan. It's a feeling of happiness, contentment. It's similar to that. You can say it's like, oh, alhamdulillah, I made it.
So were you able to finish the prior to? Because I know there was an annual graduation ceremony, correct?
I finished it like the week of.
Oh, okay. So the week of.
I finished it the week of the graduation.
Nice.
And we had a plan. We had informed the teachers, okay, this is the plan for him to finish like the week of, because they wanted to plan everything. So they were a little bit skeptical the week of, like, what if he doesn't finish?
Yeah.
It was like, Hafiz like, listen, he'll get it done.
MashaAllah. So then, you finish your memorization. Was there any type of regimen where Hafiz Ali would tell you to, you have to do this much amount of door, this much amount of revision? How was that?
From what I remember, I think there are only 3 people who finished with Hafiz Ali. From the class that like who started and finished with him at that time. Hafiz Bashir started, but he went and he finished with Mawlana Aziz, and others finished afterwards because Hafiz Ali was only teaching he only taught for a period of 3 years. So some students started, but they finished years after that, right?
Yeah.
So within that 3-year period, it was, from what I remember, it was Hafiz Razan, Mawlana Mushi, and myself, and they both finished before me. And we would always hear him say, I would always hear him say, he was always focusing on strength of memorization. Like he would always encourage us, and he would tell us, my best student is not the one who does this or that. I remember him saying, my best student is one who goes to the grave with the strongest Quran. And he would tell us, like, when it comes to Taraweeh, you have to lead by yourself. There's no such thing as having a partner for Taraweeh. And so he was big on encouraging us to memorize strong, to keep up with it, to lead all of Taraweeh by yourself. But my situation was a little bit unique in the sense that after I finished, Hafiz Ali, before I even finished, if I remember correctly, yeah. Before I even finished, I don't know if other students know this, but he had sat with me and he told me that he was gonna go. He was gonna leave to get married, and that he wanted me to teach his class. So he told me about this before I finished. So we had like a strict plan for me to finish, and then after graduation, after the break, I would begin teaching right away. So I didn't have an opportunity to do a door with him because I finished the week of graduation. Then there was the 2-week break that normally comes after graduation, or a break, and then I began teaching right away.
So let me ask you about that conversation. How was that conversation with Hafiz Ali?
For me, I had so much honor and respect for Hafiz Ali, and I still do, obviously. But at that time, it's like my Hifz teacher is asking me to do this. And I told him, okay, let me make istikhara. So I made istikhara for a couple of days. And because at this moment, this is going to alter a lot of my plans. Like, as I mentioned, I wanted to memorize and go to college and become an accountant. That's just what my goal was. I wanted to become an accountant. And then slowly, like, step by step, things changed, right? So it wasn't like I had a goal of memorizing Quran, studying, doing this. Everything happened like just step by step, right? So okay, I'm supposed to go start my college. Okay, he's asking me to teach. Okay, I guess I'll teach for like a year or something.
Yeah.
So he asked me, and so I'm thinking after Sakhar, okay, should I delay my plans? Should I teach? Should I begin the alim course? Because I also had a strong yearning to study at that point. Because you're in the environment, you're seeing the ulama, you're interacting with the students who are in the alim course. Like Mufti Abrar was studying at IIE at that time. So throughout my hifz, I would see him every day.
Yeah.
And I would sit with him. And just being with the alim course students also like encouraged me to want to study. So all these things I'll have to figure out what I'm going to do. I made istikhara and I decided to accept. I accepted to study, I accepted to teach and then study the alim course while I was there for that year, or began studying it. And so it was a little bit, I had no idea that's what he was going to ask me. It was like very shocking.
Yeah.
But once it synced in that, okay, he actually asked me to teach the class, I made istikhara and we talked about it, and I accepted. At that moment, even still, obviously, but at that time, I had so much respect for my teachers. It was like your teacher asks you something, you can't say no. But at the same time, like you got to make a decision that's in your best interest. And he also didn't want me to make a rush decision. He actually encouraged me to make a istikhara. He told me, okay, make a istikhara and see what happens.
Yeah.
He would tell me, take your time, don't rush, but make a istikhara. So he also wanted to make sure that I was doing the best thing as well for myself.
So you're teaching and then studying part-time as well?
Right.
Okay, mashallah.
So all that happened in 1 year.
How tough was that?
It was a little bit tough, but it wasn't. I mean, what was tough was figuring out how to teach. Like I was a student, now I have to teach.
Yeah.
And what was really awkward was my classmates are not my students. Like some of those classmates who I memorized, I did his with, are now like reciting to me. A lot of them came after me. Right? So a lot of them came after me, but we were still classmates for a good period of time.
Yeah.
And so now I'm teaching them. So I'm thinking, like, how do they take me serious? Like, how do they take me as like their teacher? So it was like, Hafiz Ali, what he would do is he would call. He then went to Bosnia, and he would call and stay connected. It wasn't like he left me out to dry. He would give me instructions, encouragement, tips. And he would call. He would stay connected with the students. He would stay connected with me. We were constant communication in email, and with the class, he was calling in like probably weekly, if I remember correctly, from overseas. Yeah. So he would call my phone, and I would just put it on speaker. Then he would talk to the class. So like that, they knew that he was the real teacher, and I'm just like filling his space, right? For my classmates, for those who were my classmates, right. Then I sat in like the teacher's spot. Then I'm just helping the teacher out, but the real teacher is Hafiz Ali. But those who came after I started teaching didn't know all this background that I'm actually subbing for Hafiz Ali.
So you're like soy capitan.
So they actually saw me as the teacher.
Yeah.
And so it was like, I mean, I didn't, at that point, I didn't really focus too much on like what they think. I was just like, my teacher.
I gotta teach.
I gotta just figure this out, follow instructions, and then go to class and study. And it was also like a test to convince my parents, because I'm the first person in my entire family lineage who's going to the madrasa. No one in my mother's side was Hafil. No one in my father's side is Hafil.
Oh, no.
And I'm like I'm going all in, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to the madrasa and I'm memorizing Quran. And my father, when I was finishing high school, he would ask me, "What are you going to do with your life? What do you plan to do?" He never, he asked me that question just like that multiple times. He never said, "Okay, so which college are you going to go to? Or what are you going to study? What profession are you going to take up?" He would ask me, "What are you going to do with your life? Like, what's your next plan?" Right? And so I said, "You know, I want to memorize Quran." He said, "If you memorize Quran, I'm not going to hold you back." And so he was very encouraging. My mother was very encouraging. And so that was good. But now when I finished Hifz and I wanted to do something that no one in my family had ever done before, which is study full time, he just basically asked me, "What are you going to do with this? Like, where does this take you in life?
Mm-hmm.
If you go to college, you can get a profession, degree, this, that." So I was like, I guess I'll teach. I was just going step by step. I didn't have like this long 10-year plan. It was just like step by step, wherever life takes you, I guess. That it was that type of thing. And I was like, I made my istikhara and I knew that I wanted to study. And now I have to convince my parents because they're kind of skeptical. They don't know anyone who's done this. And I'm not giving them like the best answer in terms of where this is going to lead me in life.
Yeah.
So they're kind of like in limbo. They don't want to tell me not to do it because they know that's not good. I mean, it's not good to tell someone who wants to study deen to not study deen, right? So like, okay, you're our son, you want to study, but they never said no, but they had a tough time like telling me yes or accepting that's what I wanted to do. So I had to be strategical about it. I remember I told my parents once, you never met with my Hifz teacher. You don't know how my Hifz is going. Why don't you and come have like a parent-teacher conference with my teacher and talk to him? Like, that's a good idea. And then I went to Hafz. I'm like, you got to encourage them. You got to convince them to let me study.
Yeah.
Right? And I remember I was with Mawlana Aziz once, and I was helping him like with different things. Like I was his driver, which we loved being around Mawlana Aziz. Obviously, we still do. Everyone loves Mawlana Aziz. Like, he's just such a jolly personality, so approachable. So the fact that he would ask me to drive him somewhere was like an honor. Oh, we get to chill with you, and he was very like, anyone knows Mawlana Aziz knows Mawlana Aziz. So I remember once I spent considerable amount of time like driving him somewhere, and he told me once, he said, I'm going to make dua for you. He said, I'm going to make dua for you in tahajjud. I'm like, oh, mashallah. And I said, okay, can you make dua that Allah Ta'ala tell my parents, he convinced them to let me study. So, alhamdulillah, from fadl of Allah, they basically just said, okay. And so I just continued.
Did you ever get in a car accident with Mawlana Aziz?
I did. Yeah. Mawlana Aziz was driving that one though.
Yeah, tell me about that.
Yeah. That was the one time Mawlana Aziz was driving. Because I would always drive. Yeah. And then now he wanted to learn how to drive. And it wasn't his fault. I felt so bad because he was driving, he was taking a left turn. And so there's two lanes. The person in the left lane, there's two lanes going
turning
the other
left.
way. Yeah, the person in the left lane tells him, come. There's no one there. Okay. But we didn't see that there was a car on the other lane, right? And alhamdulillah, it was like maybe a road where the speed limit is 30 or something. Yeah. So he went, we saw the person say, come. So he went and yeah, it's interesting you remember that. Yeah. Did he tell you about that?
He told me about it. Yeah.
It was around that time where he mentioned the dua thing and everything.
Mashallah. Yeah. So you're teaching. I mean, it can be kind of awkward to teach in your teacher's place, or no?
It was very awkward, but my teacher wasn't there, and he instructed me. So what I would do was, He had a specific place where he would sit. I didn't sit in that place. I like moved the desk over.
Yeah.
So I felt a little bit more comfortable sitting in like a little bit over from where he would sit. And at the same time, I was following his instructions and basically following his command. So that's what made me more easy.
So one of the questions that I always ask from Hifz teachers, is it difficult listening to students recite the Quran? And what type of appreciation did you gain for your own teacher?
Teaching Hifz is one of the most difficult teaching jobs. It's very, very difficult. And I didn't realize that up until I started teaching. It requires constant attention. It requires constant focus. And if you want to do like a good job and you want to fulfill the responsibility, you always have to be on your toes. You always have to be listening. You always have to not let like things slip by, because at the same time it's an amana, right? And so it definitely allowed me to appreciate what my teacher was doing for so many years much more, because now I'm teaching and I say, okay, this is, especially like you have students at different levels. All of them are coming to you from the beginners. Now you have to balance out how much time you give each student. Now you have to balance out, their schedules. You have to make sure that they're following schedule. You have to make sure that they're doing their routine. And as a teacher, you have to make sure that they're progressing, but making sure that it's not just progression without strength.
Yeah.
Where you can't really do that for them, but at least you know that there's a plan for that. So it was very taxing in the beginning, but after time you get used to it. And again, what helped was Hafiz Ali being there to supervise me.
MashaAllah.
And giving me tips. I was in constant contact with him. That helped a lot. Yeah.
MashaAllah. So fast forward, I mean, you're going in through the motions of teaching. Hafiz Ali's checking in on you guys.
Right.
And then you're also studying part-time.
Right.
You started your first year of your autumn course, correct?
Right.
Okay, so what changes from year 1 to year 2?
The 1 year that I teach, I'm teaching Hifz and studying, Hafiz Ali returns. So he returns at the end of like the year. And so basically I'm relieved of having to teach now, because now he's continuing. He comes back and the idea is he's going to stay for some time, and eventually they would have to find another teacher, which everyone is working together to fulfill that goal. Now I began studying full time. And it was very interesting. I guess you can say I got lucky because I had amazing classmates.
MashaAllah.
Classmates who were very dedicated, classmates who were experienced, mature. Mawlana Muhammad Chaudhry, mashallah, Mawlana Asif, Sheikh Khalid Harrington, Mawlana Mustafa McNeil. Mustafa and Khalid being the older classmates, they were really in the beginning role models. They were always there to make sure that we did our work.
MashaAllah, both of them, Sheikh Khalid and Imam Mustafa, both had families too, right?
They had families, but they were very serious about studying.
MashaAllah.
I mean, we once we joined their class, because what happened was they did the second year. We were in the first year. They did the second year, and they held themselves back to do the second year a second time.
Oh, wow.
Because they felt that they didn't do it well enough.
MashaAllah.
So they're studying, and they have families. So now we joined them. So basically, we're joining them because they hold themselves back, and we're moving from the first year to second year. And that really was like a big turning point, because now Mustafa, he had a family, he had kids, he responsibilities, and he'd spend the whole day with us. And from the point that they became our classmates, we were eating, sleeping, breathing studies.
MashaAllah.
Like, I'm talking about, we had a jar in our classroom for anyone who speaks English. You got to put 25 cents in the jar.
Oh, MashaAllah.
You got to start speaking Arabic, right? So it was that. And I remember the second year was a breakthrough year, because that's when we started to have dreams in Arabic. I remember like a classmate, Muhammad, he came in and he was so happy. He's like, guys, I'm like, what? He's like, I had my first dream in Arabic. You had a dream in Arabic? Really? Like, that actually happened to you?
Yeah.
And then my next classmate says that, I had a dream. I had my first dream in Arabic too. And then I'm like, when is my dream gonna come? A couple of days later, I had my first dream in Arabic.
Yeah,
so we were like just really engrossed. And Mawlana Bilal was like very, very encouraging. He was like our role model. he would push us a lot, really, really push us. I'm talking about, like, I remember one day we were sitting in class and we were studying a book of Jami' al-Durus al-Arabiya, which is a book that is studied for someone who specializes in Arabic. And now, it's studied, we taught it at Darul Qasim as well. It's studied normally in like the second year. So we were studying that, and now it's normally studied. At that time, we would tell us students who study, who specialize in Arabic, they study this book. Okay, I'm going to teach this book to you. So we were studying that, and I remember one day we came into class, he asked us the question, and we didn't know the answer. He said, okay, now all of you, you have to sit down, you have to memorize this page. We had to memorize a page from a book of Nahu. And so I'm thinking, okay. And he's like, you're going to start doing this. You're going to have to start memorizing.
Yeah.
Like, all right. So we would start memorizing. And the next day, he would come and test us. I remember one day that we didn't have it memorized. So he said, okay, that's it. We'll stop class and memorize now.
MashaAllah.
So we sat there and we memorized the page and we presented it back to him.
Man, that's awesome,
Yeah,
mashallah. I mean, was there ever a time within your studies where, I mean, maybe something came in the way, or is it, your strong determination from your coach that what you start, you're going to finish?
Nothing came in the way from deterring me to want to finish, but something did come in the way for me to want to go overseas.
Okay.
Towards like around the third year, I thought to myself, okay, there was big like craze to go to South Africa at that time. Many students were going to South Africa, and I thought, I want to go to South Africa. So I looked into South Africa. I even talked to one of my teachers about this as well. I talked to some of the teachers there, like did my research, figured out the schedule, what they study, and whatnot, and then kind of compared it to the curriculum that we were studying. And also figured out like the class size and the classroom environment, talked to students who had studied in South Africa to see how it was, try to get do my due diligence of research. And I think Mawlana Muhammad, and they knew that I was looking into it. And at that point, after doing all the research, I made istikhara and I thought about the classroom environment and everything, and I decided not to go. And my istikhara was clear for me not to go. And I had a dream, and it was very clear. And that was the best decision I ever made.
MashaAllah.
Not to go. You can say the standard of studies, what we got at IIE was just amazing. We had, Mawlana Yasir, who he's a very, very high level teacher. Very high level teacher. Like anything he teaches, it's going to be amazing.
Yeah,
right? Just listen to his lectures, right? He's a research-minded individual, right? So, and he's a high-level scholar. So, he was teaching us a lot. So we were learning so much from him. Mawlana Suleiman, all of the teachers. We were doing tafsir with Mawlana Slim, which we were just being blown away because that's his thing. Quran is what runs in their bloodline, right? Right. So we were just getting really high-level studies there. And at the end of the day, anyone will tell you, we were studying the books, we were benefiting. And at the end of the day, anyone who in their studies who only relies on the classroom and what you get from the classroom will only be limited to how much they actually benefit. You're going to benefit in the classroom, but you need to do your work outside as well. Like if you only pay attention in class, you only do what you're doing in class, you only study what you study in class, but you don't put in the time outside of class to study more, to review or to do mutala, read other books, your benefit and your studies will be marginalized, right?
So how much time are you spending outside of studies?
I would spend the whole day. I began at one point doing college as well.
Okay.
And after mashwara istikhara, I decided I wanted to keep that option open. But I decided just to focus. After having started for a little bit, I decided, okay, I just want to focus completely on studies. That's just what I was inclined to at the time as well. And we were spending many hours, 4 or 5 hours outside of, or at least 3 or 4 hours outside of class studying together. And we were all really dedicated to it. We would push each other. We were there the whole day together. Me, Mawlana Muhammad, Mustafa, Asif was there. He would leave towards the last half of the day. but we would stay together, study. It was like our day revolved around studying. We'd eat,
MashaAllah.
breathe, sleep, and studies.
What was your favorite subject to study?
The Arabic grammar, and of course tafsir. Those were, but you have to. We knew you have to study fiqh well. So we would study fiqh. We would do our due diligence there. But my natural inclination was towards Quran, and even at one point I wanted to leave just to study Quran. In my fourth year, I was benefiting a lot, but I thought to myself, I had this strong passion for Quran and the qira'at and tajweed and all of these things. I wanted to just leave and go to Egypt and study and just immerse myself in those things. I'm in Mashwara with one of my teachers, and they said, okay, that's a great goal, and we know that we can see that that's what you want to do. However, by studying here and finishing, you're going to accomplish most of what you would need to accomplish to be an expert in that field. And that made a lot of sense to me at that time.
MashaAllah.
I mean, I didn't. It was just a thought that occurred to me. I was entertaining it for some time. I talked to my teacher about it. He gave me that sincere and amazing advice, and I stuck with it. And alhamdulillah. So I really enjoyed Arabic grammar. I enjoyed tafsir. We spent our due diligence on fiqh and of course hadith.
MashaAllah.
We really enjoyed hadith. Yeah, especially Muslim, and then Mufti Yasir just was on like a different level. Him, Mufti Yasir, we just like loved his class.
MashaAllah.
We would like the entire time in Mufti Yasir's class, he's teaching us Tirmidhi, the first volume of Tirmidhi, and what many people say, like in the Madaris, like is the most qualified teacher actually teaches the first volume of Tirmidhi. Like the ibadat and the comparative fiqh that is associated to that, or one of the most qualified teachers. But I heard from many ulama, the most qualified teacher teaches Tirmidhi. So Mufti Yasir was teaching us Tirmidhi, and it was just mind-blowing. Just the research and all the everything that he was sharing. I transcribed all of his classes. I would write down everything. I recorded his classes, then even would listen to the recording after class, write it down. I looked at I still look at those notes. Even when we were studying Bukhari with Mawlana Slim, a great experience. And I remember I came up with this like journal, and that there's some amazing hadith here, obviously. And I'm gonna forget these hadith. There's so many you're studying, and I'm gonna forget where to look them up, what the hadith that we're studying, or like the subject matter, what they are about. So I just came up with this journal, like a dictionary or a fahris for myself, where I whenever we would come across like a very interesting hadith or something that I felt that I'm gonna want to reference this later on, I would just highlight it, and at the end of class I would just write, okay, volume 1 Bukhari, this hadith number talks about this. Right? So I did that for like all 4 volumes of Bukhari. So even later on, when I sometimes remember I'm trying to give khutbah and I'm like, man, I remember there's this one hadith in Bukhari that was amazing. And I looked through that, I'm like, oh, it's right here. I wrote it down.
That's awesome, mashallah. How long was your curriculum?
It was 5 years at that time.
5 years, mashallah. Yeah. So one thing I kind of, leading up to continue forward with studies, how was graduation?
It was bittersweet. It was, it feels like an accomplishment. But at the same time, for me, it was like I had been coming to IE for 7 years, like the Alm course and the Hibs, every day for 7 years, making the same drive. It's like, man, I'm not going to be making the same drive anymore.
SubhanAllah.
It was very, I didn't try to think about it too much before, but when graduation day came, that's when it hit me like, man, this drive that I make from my cousin's house to IIE, and then like whenever I go home and in the mornings, it's like, man, this is it. This is the last time I'm going to be making this drive. It was very bitter, because you're like, man, this is what I've been doing for the past 7 years. I've been coming here every day for the past 7 years. Now I'm gonna move on. It was a little bit tough to swallow, but obviously that's life. You just have to move on. One of our classmates, Mawlana Khalid, he was a student of Sheikh Amin, and he had been a student of Sheikh Amin for some time before that. So we, alhamdulillah, from the fadl of Allah, one thing was, so it can be bitter it's sweet because you have a goal, and you've at least accomplished one goal that you had, which is okay to complete the course. But we never felt that we always wanted to study more. So it's like, okay, I never felt comfortable being called a scholar. It's like I'm a student of knowledge and I just want to keep studying. I'm not a scholar. So it was bitter because, okay, like sentimentally, you've been coming here for 7 years. You're not going to be here in this place where you're studying anymore. And it's also bitter because it could be bitter because you're thinking, am I going to be able to study still? Or how am I going to forward my studies? So Mawlana Khalid had approached Sheikh Amin, and Sheikh Amin was very accommodating. And we had talked about this before that we had certain books that we wanted to study, certain gaps that we wanted to fill, because everyone who studies cannot say that it's 100% perfect. There's going to be gaps that you want to fill in whatever subject. So we had talked about it. We said, okay, we want to like these gaps. We want to be better in this subject, this subject, this subject. So Mawlana Khalid approached Sheikh Amin, and Sheikh Amin basically designed a 2-year course for us, catering to what we wanted.
MashaAllah.
And he himself was one of the teachers. Sheikh Abdullah Farouk, who was teaching at Darul Qasim, was also one of the teachers, and there were others. So it was bitter, but it was also good to know, okay, you're going to keep studying. You're going to forward your studies, because we graduated the next month. We were sitting with Sheikh Amin.
MashaAllah.
So there wasn't much of a gap. I think like 2-3 weeks later we were sitting with Sheikh Amin.
That's like a normal break.
It's like a normal break, and it worked out for us. Why? Because we knew that we originally wanted to do that at IIE, but we knew it couldn't happen because everyone is at max capacity. All the teachers are teaching day and night. And you can't just tell them, okay, like fit in this schedule for this new class. For what we want. It's like they have a course to teach. So we knew that, okay, we have to take another route, and Sheikh Amin facilitated that for us. So that really we found that like an amazing opportunity. Found that to be very beneficial. That we're able to have a course catered to exactly what we feel our needs are, and Sheikh Amin just helped fill in those gaps in the 2-year course. And we also knew that, okay, we're all moving on in one way or another. So the schedule has to be in a way that it fits all of our schedules.
MashaAllah.
Like whatever the course is, the design, the time, it has to fit all of our schedules that are now post studies at IIE. And so that wasn't going to be possible at IIE. And Sheikh Amin was able to make it happen. So alhamdulillah, from the fadl of Allah, we all just started, like myself, Mawlana Asir, Mawlana Khalid, Mawlana Mustafa, we just started moving forward and started studying with Sheikh Amin. And that was very, very, very beneficial to be able to fill those gaps and study. I mean, Sheikh Amin's...
Yeah, mashallah.
There's certain people that need introduction. You don't need all you need to know is Sheikh Amin. So we began to study with him. And that was very, very, very nice.
What were you guys studying?
We were studying... We wanted to study more of Usul al-Hadith. We wanted to study some more chapters of certain of Hadith books. We studied Maliki fiqh, and we also we were studying the Muwatta of Imam Malik with a Maliki, Sheikh Abdullah Farouk. And then Sheikh Amin was teaching us a very nice course. We wanted to further our fiqh study, so he was teaching us an usul al-fiqh / fiqh class that was hands-on based, meaning he had a book that he would that he assigned as the course text, and what we would do is in that book it was 100 fatawa, and so he would say, okay, every day or every class we're going to read one fatwa. We're going to extract the usul that were used in this fatwa, and then see, once we extract the usul, if the conclusion is correct, if we agree with the conclusion. So we did that for like almost the whole book. And so like that it was a hands-on approach to usul, and also a hands-on approach to, okay, you have this question, these are the usul that are being used. would you come to the same conclusion? Is this the correct fatwa to give? And Sheikh Amin carefully chose a book where he didn't agree with all the fatwa. Right? So
Man, that sounds amazing, mashallah.
it was amazing. It was mind blowing just the way that we had that class, and we did that for about a year and a half. That was really, really beneficial.
MashaAllah.
Really beneficial.
MashaAllah.
And it was all like contemporary masail that we experienced here in America and traditional masail as well. It was very nice. So we were able to do that with Sheikh Amin. It was basically a book, usul al-fiqh, usul al-ifta work, without actually like doing a mufti course. It wasn't, and I'm not saying that we did something comparable to what muftis do in their ifta work, but we did something to really further our understanding of fiqh in a hands-on approach, as well as usul al-fiqh.
MashaAllah. So at this point, are you also working anywhere, or are you just studying?
I'm officially Imam of Bolingbrook.
Officially Imam.
At this time,
MashaAllah. You're traveling between Bolingbrook to what? Glendale Heights or it's a decent drive.
Yeah.
Were your responsibilities 5 daily salahs as well?
No. So first off, driving was never something that fazed me.
Okay.
Because I lived in Plainfield, so wherever you go, you gotta drive.
No matter what, you're driving far.
Wherever you're driving far, right?
Yeah.
Like 30-minute drive, man, that's rather close. That's pretty.
That's just to get groceries.
Right? So when I hear someone say, "Oh, this 20 minutes away is far," I'm like, well, 20 minutes far. What are you talking about? But I hear people say that, I'm like, dude, that's like next door.
Yeah.
So driving wasn't phased because, I would make that drive weekly because I would stay with my. Cousins, my aunt, during the week, and then on the weekends I would drive home, and then drive back to IIE. So that's how I spent the 7 years.
Yeah.
Except at the end, I would just completely stay over there, and you just get used to driving because you're far. In Plainfield, you're at like nowhere, right? So we didn't really want to move there, but some of my cousins also, aunt and uncle, were there, and it was a place that my parents wanted to move. So driving it wasn't really a big deal for me. I wasn't gonna make a decision on whether I wanted to go somewhere or do something just based off of distance. For me, it was like, okay, I gotta drive to Plainfield, to Glen Ellen, to the Bolingbrook, whatever. It's got to do it. It's 40 minutes, not that big of a deal. In the morning, it's about an hour, but an hour was standard. An hour from Plainfield, you want to get somewhere, hour is standard. You know what I'm saying? So we would we studied in the morning. We would study from like 9:30 to 1 or about 9:30 to 1, and then I would begin my imamah duties at 4:30. Okay. So I had a couple hours off, right? Yeah. And then from 4:30 to Isha, I was at the masjid.
Okay, mashallah.
Pretty much, yeah.
How was that experience? I mean, are you still currently with Bolingbrook Masjid?
So I'm not officially like like I don't have an official position. Okay. I just lead Jumu'ah, help out with certain things, but no official position.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, at any point were you leading 5 daily prayers there?
Oh yeah, that question. Yeah. No, so when they approached me, when I was finishing the course at IIE, they somehow approached me and
they're scouting you.
Yeah, somehow like I forgot exactly what happened, but I remember them approaching me.
Yeah.
And we talked about it. And when I was studying, I would hear all of these horror imam stories. So I thought to myself, like, this imam got treated like this imam got treated like that. They did this. I'm like, man, imams just don't get treated right. Yeah. So when I was studying, I'm like, the one thing I'm not going to do is become an imam. Like, I made intention not to be an imam. Right? Like, it was, I would just hear a lot of stories. So I get this offer. I'm like, no. And then I'm like, wait, you should probably think about it. Because it was actually very close to me. I live in Plainfield. Bolingbrook is next door. It's like 12, 13, 15 minutes away. So it's like, wait, that's not a bad offer. And in the beginning, I thought to myself, just do it for a year. Then if you want to do something else, because everyone would recommend doing imamah for like a year. All the ulama would recommend you should do imamah for a year. There's a lot of benefit in it. So when they approached me, they only approached me with the 1-year contract. Nice. And I told them at that point that I can't do all 5 salah. I can only do 4. I can't do Zuhur because I'm going to be studying at Darul Qasim. Yeah. And so they accepted it. They didn't that wasn't a big deal for them at all. They didn't make a big deal about that at all. They just said, okay, sure, fine. So you can do Fajr, Asr, Maghrib, Isha. Yes. So that made it easier. Not having to do the whole, like, was what allowed me to do what I wanted to do.
So, I mean, I know something about you. You love to lead salah.
Well, one thing I enjoy is reciting Quran. Alhamdulillah, fadl of Allah. And Bolingbroke had a really good mic system.
Oh, yeah.
And I had access to the
mixer to tune everything. Yeah.
So I had access to it. Like, I had the key to the room where the mixer was in.
Yeah.
So because when I became imam, they gave me the keys, and I'm like, all right, this is the mixer. No one's here. Let me go mess around with it.
You're like, I'm gonna make sure I cannot lead Dhuhr Salah.
Right, exactly. Right. So they had a really nice mic. And they still do, mashallah. Very nice mic. The system was nice. So that really helps. The mic system made reciting enjoyable. When I first got there, obviously after making istikhara and mashwara with the teachers and speaking to my parents and thinking about it, I decided, okay, this is something good that I should do, especially since it's very close to home. Like, I don't have to relocate at all. It's like 10, 15 minutes away from where I live. The board knew that there were going to be obstacles, and they, right off the bat, were 100% supportive.
MashaAllah.
I mean, anything that anyone was going to say to bother me, they were there to, like, defend me. I remember their first Taraweeh. They had that Taraweeh dhikr that some masajid do. Subuhun Quddus, and the whole, like, what's known as Taraweeh dua, although it's not really Taraweeh dua.
Yeah.
Mufti Brar wrote something nice about that as well. So they asked me, okay, we've been doing this at Bolingbroke as a tradition for many, many years. Should we continue doing it? I'm thinking, okay, I'm the imam. I have to teach them. I said, no, there's no connection between that and Taraweeh. So it shouldn't be done. So the president at that time said, the imam said it. We're gonna get backlash. That's it. We're not doing this dua anymore.
MashaAllah.
We're gonna listen to him. We're not gonna do it. And so he's very staunch on, like, supporting me at that time. And there were certain occasions where I would come in right out, like, maybe a couple minutes before the iqama. All right, but I mean that was because I would get there asr in the when asrs are like 4:30ish around that time. And then stay there basically till Isha. So if I was late, I was basically going to be, like, cutting it close for Asr. Sometimes I would go home after Maghrib to eat dinner and then come back because, again, it wasn't too far. It was like 10 minutes away. So I did that quite often. So I tried to not be too late. I tried not to, like, do that. I remember one time I walked in like maybe a minute before Iqama, and I saw that people were kind of looking around, worried, or like, where's the imam and stuff. And I realized, it's probably not, like, the most professional thing to do, just walk in a minute before Iqamah. So I try not to make that as a habit. And the board was very flexible with time off. They gave me Saturdays off.
MashaAllah.
And then I would have to go in for Sunday school, and they gave me the rest of the day off, which I thought was good. But Saturdays, I was teaching at Darul Hikmah at that time.
Nice.
So I would spend my Saturday mornings at Darul Hikmah, which is my off day from the masjid.
Yeah.
And then I have Sunday morning Sunday school, and then I have the rest of the afternoon off. So I had a 7-day schedule, but it wasn't too bad because, like,
you had a nice.
Hikmah was fun. Yeah, it was like you get some time off, right?
MashaAllah.
So they weren't very they're very accommodating from that perspective. So, and that was a big thing for me when they gave me the contract. I looked through it, and we had a lot of negotiations. And even after I signed it for the first time, I looked at it and I'm like, oh, I messed up. Like I don't have enough time off. So I made mashwara with Mawlana, and he said, talk to them in this way, say this. I said, okay. So I came back, and it seemed like I guess they were desperate for an imam.
They're like, all right, fine, man.
So they just they didn't put too much of a fight. They kind of said, okay, fine. You want Saturdays off? We'll give you Saturdays off.
MashaAllah.
So at that point, I'm like, okay, this is a good start.
Yeah.
It's not like those horror stories that I've heard.
Yeah.
And the first year was very good because they were, like, supporting me. anytime someone would say something if someone comes up to you after a khutbah, you got to deal with them, right? You're not gonna ask the board, this guy, right, take care of him. This guy said something, right? You're gonna. I mean, that's in every community, right? So you gotta learn how to deal with adversity. So you learn how to do that. But the first year was like, I think any imam wouldn't have liked that, like the support and everything they give. So long as you're working with them too, or you're not trying to put yourself in harm's way. You're not like coming a minute before you call them out or something like that. It's not a really good thing to do. But the first year was like very nice, and I made intention. Okay, I'll do this for 1 year, and then I'll do something else. And they gave me 1 year contract. So after the 1 year, so okay, they came back to me with a 2-year contract, and I thought to myself, there's a lot of work to do in the community, and imam work itself is very enjoyable because there's a lot of benefits that you give to the community. And the community in general is appreciative of it. So I realized, in this community hadn't had like an imam, but there was an imam before me, but he was only there for 3-4 months. But so outside of him, he was a really qualified imam. But once he left, and before him, they didn't have like they didn't have an imam who was, I guess, like doing all the things that would benefit the community, maybe according to what they told me. So they didn't have like an imam that was really catering to most of the needs of the community. So I felt that, okay, there's a lot of work to do here in the community, and I see that there's a lot of benefits. And so I want to, after the first year, I'm like, I want to continue. Like, I don't want to just lead the community like this. I want to continue to help them. I want to continue to do the work. And so at that point, I was much more willing to want to continue. And I had a schedule, and okay, I'm going to the masjid. I'm going to Darul Qasim. Everything is smooth. Alhamdulillah, from the fadl of Allah. So might as well just continue. And there's so much benefit. I mean, I enjoy doing the work of an imam. But sometimes it's not the most enjoyable to do it in those circumstances.
So you were there for how long?
I was there for about 2.5, 3 years.
2.5, 3 years.
Like as a full-time imam. 2.5, 3 years. That's how long I was there for. And it was a very enjoyable time. There's a lot to learn from imam. I learned a lot from it. And there's a lot of things that you hear that really give you gratification, that bring you, satisfaction that it was a good thing.
MashaAllah.
Things that you don't even know about. Like as an imam, when you're dealing with the community, there's a lot of things that are happening, like the way you maybe touch someone's life that you don't even know about. You're giving a talk after Salah or after Taraweeh, and people are benefiting, and you don't know it because they don't tell you right away. Or you're just doing what you normally do, you're in a routine, and you leave. But later on, like you find out like these stories and what people come and say. Like, for example, I would do these khatiras every night after Isha, and there was a guy who would just every day go to the back of the masjid and then grab something and then come back and then like finish his salah. So every day I'm seeing this guy who do this. Like he sits in a particular place and he goes in the back of the masjid and then just grabs something and then finishes his salah there. I just noticed it, I don't say anything. I'm like, it's just an observation. And then later on he tells me, oh, you know what I do back there? I'm like, no. I didn't ask him. He just mentioned this on his own because now I know the brother. We're playing ping pong, and so we had a very a cordial relationship. So he said, you know what I do is actually I record all your talks and I send them back home, and people benefit from it. It's like, wow. And there's other things, like just the other day, like a couple months ago, I had to do someone's nikah, and sometimes Bolonga is a very big community. It's like
MashaAllah.
Thousands of in Eid Salah you get 1,200 people. Like in the main Salah you get like 1,200 people and a lot more when you combine all the Salahs that occur. So there's a lot of people, and even in Taraweeh, a lot of people that come.
MashaAllah.
And I would do like my tafsir after Taraweeh for about 10 minutes and just leave. And this was like a couple of years ago. a couple months ago, I did someone's nikah. The father called me and he said, "Can you do a nikah?" I said, "Okay." We talked, and he said, my son would pray Taraweeh behind you, and after every tafsir you gave, he would write out the notes and send it to our family on our WhatsApp group, so
MashaAllah.
everyone reads this.
MashaAllah.
Like, that's like it's like, wow, I didn't know like
Yeah.
people did that. Like one time I was giving, there's stories like that. Every imam has a story. I don't know if I just like, there's a lot of benefit in the imam work. I would read, there were two things that would really motivate me or encourage me. I read a book, it's called Pearls of the Quran. It's in English. It has
MashaAllah.
like many benefits of like being a hafiz and reciting Quran, so on and so forth. And in it, there was a hadith that the author brings about one of the people who will enter Jannah is a person who people would pray behind and they're happy with him.
Allah
Like they're
Akbar.
happy with his recitation. They're happy like praying behind him. The hadith mentions like this is one of the people who will be in Jannah. So it's like so being an imam is an opportunity.
Yeah.
You have an opportunity to enact the hadith,
MashaAllah.
right? Then you hear statements of like Mawlana Anwar Shah Kashmiri rahimahullah, who is such a giant scholar. They say about Allama Anwar Shah Kashmiri, right? لولا سبقته الزمان لعد من الأعيان. If he didn't come so later on in time, people would mention his name like they mentioned the names of Imam Bukhari, Imam Muslim, and like the greats of our academic tradition. He said towards the end of his life, he said, I wish I spent more time bringing the general masses back to the basics of Islam.
Subhanallah.
He said that towards the end of his life. So it's like, as an imam, that's what you're doing. You're obviously, you have to be sincere and be good yourself. But that's basically what you're doing as an imam. You're trying to help people come back to the basics of Islam. So there's a lot of good work that's done as an imam and a lot of benefits, and it's an opportunity. So there's an opportunity to like get the benefits of the hadith and so on and so forth. Yeah. So once I was exposed to that, I realized this is like work that you're helping other people, right? Obviously, you do it for the sake of Allah, but when you see that you actually helped someone, it feels good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like I realized imam work is very it's very important and it's good work.
Let me ask you something, and something I forgot to ask you actually. How was your first Taraweeh?
The first Tarawih is very, very nerve-wracking. It was very nerve-wracking. When I would hear the name Tarawih,
Yeah.
I would get nervous.
Oh,
like
subhanallah.
after I finished my hifz,
Yeah.
and someone would mention Tarawih, I would get nervous. Like, oh man, Tarawih is coming up, right? Because what ended up happening was Hafiz Lee was normally leading at Masjid Da'wah. So Mufti Yasir was doing Tarawih at Masjid Da'wah. Then Hafiz Ali started doing Tarawih at Masjid Da'wah. And he asked me if I wanted to lead a Masjid Da'wah. I thought to myself, it's difficult to find a masjid in Chicago. And my teacher's asking me to take his place in Masjid Da'wah. So I said, okay, yeah, I'll do it. And I wanted to do it by myself. And I needed to do it in 20 days because I was planning on going for Umrah in the last 10 days.
MashaAllah.
So it was my first Taraweeh. I had to finish it in 20 days.
Yeah.
And I was doing it by myself. And I think it was like only a month or a couple months after I'd finished my hifz. So all those things combined, it was quite nerve-wracking when I would hear the name Taraweeh and thinking about like, I have to do this and by myself, finish early. But alhamdulillah, from the fadl of Allah, Allah Ta'ala made it easier.
MashaAllah.
I would revise a lot. So basically, in my first Taraweeh, I kept my schedule open, where the only thing I had to worry about was Taraweeh. And so, my hifz wasn't, alhamdulillah, from the fadl of Allah, I wasn't weak.
MashaAllah.
So I was able to, but the last 10 juz were not strong. Why? Because I did the last 10 juz in 2 months.
Oh, wow.
Like, because I was averaging, and this is normal, very normal in him.
Yeah.
To average like a juz a week, right?
Yeah,
That's
mashallah.
very normal, as you know, like a juz in 5 days is very normal. So I did like 10 juz in like 2 months, which means you haven't revised it a lot. I haven't revised it a lot. And I memorized it very quick. So what I ended up doing was I did the first 20 juz in Taraweeh in about the first 10 days.
Knock it out.
Just do it like that. So I can focus on 1 juz a day for the last 10 juz, because I knew that was going to be difficult.
MashaAllah.
So alhamdulillah, it just worked out that way, where I was able to do that. And the last 10 days, I had enough time during the day to prepare the juz, and then recite it at night. So it worked out, alhamdulillah, from the fadl of Allah.
MashaAllah. MashaAllah. And how long have you been leading Taraweeh now?
No, 14 years now.
MashaAllah. About a decade and a half.
Right, about, yeah.
Yeah. What advices would you have for individuals who are leading Taraweeh?
The first thing I would say is try to lead by yourself. This could be practical and impractical at the same time. That's what I meant. Like when I say, if I was giving advice earlier, I would say this without any exception, like lead by yourself. But that might be difficult today, because it might be, if you're trying to look for a masjid and whatnot. Today it's difficult because some masajids are closed, right? But let's say in the normal circumstance where masajids are open, it might be difficult to lead by yourself, because you're not going to find a masjid for every hafiz, right? And the reason why it's important for them to have a public platform for Taraweeh is because sometimes they need that motivation. If you tell them, okay, lead Taraweeh at your house, and they need motivation to be able to do that, and they need to put in work, they're probably going to take off some days, and they're probably not they might not finish. But if they are in charge of a community, if they have the expectation of the congregants that you're going to be finishing the entire Quran, then they're going to get it done. They're going to find a way, and they're going to finish. And even if they're making multiple mistakes a day, they'll get through it, right? So the first thing is, if you can lead by yourself and you're motivated enough, right? If you can find a masjid, great. If you can find a public place where you can lead, where you're forcing yourself to lead, that's great. Or if you have to lead by yourself at your house, lead by yourself. The first advice is try to use Taraweeh as a platform to make your hifz strong. This is your opportunity in the year. And the reason why I say that, and the way I see it, is every hafiz wants to be able to recite the entire Quran on the Day of Judgment, from beginning to end. And that can be an expectation if you've done that in this life. Like if you have like fulfilled, if you've tried to build a connection with the Quran where you're able to recite it from the beginning to end, and you've done that, let's say in Taraweeh or other situations, then inshallah that expectation is much more practical to be able to do on the Day of Judgment, right? But if you're not really revising, and you can't really recite all of Quran in Taraweeh, or even half of the Quran in Taraweeh, then that's not to say you're not able to do it on the Day of Judgment. Inshallah, Allah Ta'ala will grant you tawfiq. Even if it's difficult, inshallah, you'll be able to do it. But at least you made a sincere effort to be able to expect that, inshallah. Right? So if you haven't even made that sincere effort, then how can you expect that? Allah Ta'ala's fadl can be on anyone. And even if you haven't made that effort, we ask Allah Ta'ala to allow you to be able to do that on the Day of Judgment. Recite from the beginning to end. But in terms of what for yourself, what you can expect, you have to be able to do that in this life in order to expect that in the hereafter. Because every hafiz has invested so much time in memorizing the Quran. You want to get the most you can out of it. And that not to be taken in this world. That's to be, inshallah, obtained in the hereafter. So the first thing is lead Taraweeh. At least try to do it by yourself. And if you can't do it by yourself, at least one partner. Now you have people leading Taraweeh with 2, 3, 4, 5 partners. It's like, okay, how much are you going to recite? How much are you going to recite if you have 4 partners? A quarter juz?
Yeah.
If you're a hifz student, sometimes you're going out of state. Okay, that's fun. You're going out of state. You get a free ticket.
Yeah, get to hang out.
You get to hang out. You get to travel. But that could be done at another time. Like Taraweeh is for Quran, and for you to take advantage of all the time that you put in while memorizing. So use Taraweeh as a platform for that. First off, make a goal to recite the Quran in Taraweeh, in Salah. That's the first thing. The second thing is of course, you have to revise. What I find that will be very beneficial for someone who needs to lead Taraweeh is whatever you're going to be leading in Taraweeh, recite it in Tahajjud the night before.
MashaAllah.
So if it's the second night of Taraweeh, that first night of Ramadan, recite the second juz in your Tahajjud. And then if you've done that in your tahajjud, right, you may be able to do it right away without revision, or you may need to revise a little bit, and then you'll be able to recite it in tahajjud. The next day, when you're preparing, you're going to find it easier, and then Taraweeh won't be as nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
Even if you're nervous, you're going to be able to get through it. It's going to be much more strong. And okay, the goal is try to recite everything that you're leading in Taraweeh in the tahajjud of the night before. But even if you can't do everything, do as much as you can. Do half of it. Right? Do half of whatever you're going to read. I think if a person uses tahajjud as a means of revision, well, obviously tahajjud is for ibadah, right? But Ramadan is about Quran, and for Hafiz, obviously it's a platform, it's an opportunity to make your Quran strong. So you're using salat for that. Use tahajjud for that as well, right? So
Mashallah.
stay up at night, recite and revise the Quran. Ramadan is, you can have fun the rest of the year, right? But use Ramadan for ibadah. That's not to say you can't have fun. Okay, if you really want to chill, whatever, spend some time, but don't spend so much time where you're sacrificing your Quran, right? Now there's Huffaz who have full-time jobs and Huffaz who don't have full-time jobs. This would be practical for someone who doesn't have a full-time job, or like a student, right, who doesn't have a family with responsibilities. Try to do that and put in the time to revise the Quran, and you'll see the benefits.
Mashallah.
For someone who has a full-time job, who has a family responsibilities, where these things are difficult, my advice is do the best that you can, right? You know what you can do, and be honest with yourself, right? If you know some Huffaz are strong, and there are many people who do this, like Kamran Riyaz, mashallah.
Mashallah.
Doctor, he leads Taraweeh every year.
Mashallah.
By himself, mashallah. I mean, he's been leading Taraweeh for such a long time. And there are many other Huffaz like that. Hafiz. I mean, there's so many people in Chicago who've been doing that, and they have full-time jobs,
Mashallah.
right? So which means during the day they're working. They're not able to spend that time revising at night because they have to rest. Okay, so they're working through it. Someone might be able to do that and have a full-time job and recite the entire Quran in Taraweeh. Okay, but if you're not able to do that, just do whatever you can. Just I would say for a person, they have to be sincere with themselves. They have to be honest with themselves, not cheat themselves.
Yeah.
Right? If you can do half the Quran, that's great. Reciting half of the Quran in Taraweeh, with a full-time job, with family responsibilities, without having that much time to revise, is it's a great accomplishment.
Mashallah.
But the goal is obviously the entire Quran, but half of it will still be good. 2/3 of it will be great. I mean, the goal is the full thing, but they say, like in Arabic, "Ma la yudraku kulluhu, la yutraku kulluhu." If you can't get the entire goal, don't leave the goal like in itself. Don't leave the entire goal. If you can't get all the Quran, that doesn't mean you leave the goal of leading the Quran in Taraweeh, right?
Yeah.
So you can't get the entire Quran, no problem.
Mashallah.
Get what you can. La yutraku kullu. You don't leave it altogether. If you can't obtain something completely, you don't leave it altogether. So get whatever you can. And that's your sincerity. That's your way of showing Allah you're being sincere. And then you can have the expectation of reciting the entire Quran on the Day of Judgment.
Mashallah.
That's what I think of. That's what my teacher would tell me. You want to recite the entire Quran on the Day of Judgment? You gotta lead Taraweeh. You gotta lead Taraweeh by yourself.
Mashallah.
Yeah, it was. I mean, that's what comes to mind about what I would say. Like, if you've memorized Quran, you have the discipline, right? Because memorization requires discipline. If you've memorized Quran, you have the focus. Now what you have to do is you have to apply it here. You applied it when you're memorizing, apply it here now. And you can do it because you've done it already when you memorize Quran.
So one thing interesting about you that you mentioned was that you wanted to go study in Egypt in the midst of your studies itself. And then, mashallah, after completing your studies, you started reciting for different ijazat, and you are, mashallah, 17 qari, correct? Mashallah. So can you give us an overview on that journey itself?
My goal was never to obtain ijazat. And I don't think that should be the goal of anyone. My goal is just to continue to tread on the path of progressing and
Mashallah.
being more well informed, being more well learned in this field. And if you spend enough time doing that, you'll eventually become an expert. So my goal was never to like obtain Ijazat or anything like that. My goal was just to be better. And in order to do that, you have to find someone who's better than you, recite to them. So I did that. I found Sheikh Mustafa Muftah, who was
MashaAllah.
an imam. I found other imams. And one thing in the field of tajweed and qira'at that's very important is to be linked to Qur'an through someone else. Because if you try to approach like a world-renowned sheikh or qari on your own, chances are they're going to reject you. But if their student who they already know tries to introduce you, they're going to accept you. Or you have to find like some type of a way. So I first began reciting to Sheikh Mustafa Muftah. I would drive, when I was doing my dawrah, I would drive an hour to Orland Park from IE to recite to him. And it would take like an hour and a half to do one juz.
SubhanAllah.
And he was very, very strict, and he would
MashaAllah.
never let me move, recite fast. He's very strict on reciting slow. And I wouldn't really in the beginning recite to him on the phone. The only time we would recite on the phone is if I just wasn't able to come and there was some time that passed. He'd be like, okay, let's just recite something. So I recited to him. I was able to recite to other shayukh. Hafiz Ali, from the fadl of Allah, was able to connect me to some of the teachers of his teachers. Shaykh Quraym Raja. Shaykh Quraym Raja, who was a Shaykh al-Qurra of Syria. He came to Chicago on multiple occasions. And I was able to get in touch with the person who was in charge of his like trip.
Yeah.
And also I got in touch with his wife, who is like his manager.
MashaAllah.
So his wife manages everything, and I got in touch with like the guy who was driving him around everywhere. And there isn't too much of a rush. Like you would expect, these world-renowned Qur'an come, everyone wants to recite, but that's not the case. Especially in Chicago, you'd imagine like a big place. Either it is the case and they're just rejecting everyone, and somehow they let me recite, or it's not the case. So somehow, like, you know, I would for Sheikh Quraym Rajih, I follow Sheikh Hafiz Ali's advice. Okay, do this. Get in contact with his wife. If she gives you the heads up, that's it. If his wife wants you to recite to him, you're going to recite to him. So I got in touch with the brother who was in charge of his trips. So I was able to meet the sheikh, introduce myself, recite to him. He was happy. He allowed me to continue to recite to him when he went back to Syria or Qatar, where he resided. And I was in touch with his wife, and so his wife basically set up a time where I would recite to him weekly.
MashaAllah.
So like I was in the Bulur Masjid on Sunday school, and I would have to teach like one class, but I would have to be there in the beginning. So it just worked out perfectly. Like those hours that I'm at the masjid,
Yeah.
before my class, I'm like in a room reciting to Sheikh Quraym.
MashaAllah. MashaAllah.
It just worked out like, alhamdulillah, very well. And I've been able to meet him on multiple occasions. He's invited me to Syria or to Qatar to recite to him.
MashaAllah.
And he gave me a verbal ijaza.
MashaAllah.
He said, like, you know, you're good. I have other students who I really need that need help and improvement. But you know, you don't need that much help. I found that to be very I don't know if that's true, it's exaggerating, but I recited to him quite a bit, alhamdulillah, from the fadl of Allah, and then he gave me verbal ijaza, and he's invited me to meet him in Qatar on a couple occasions, and he just says, whenever you come for Umrah, just stop here, recite, and then you can continue.
Sure.
And so then I was able to get in contact with Sheikh وليد منيسي, the Sheikh al-Qurra of America.
He's in Minnesota, right?
He's in Minnesota. And I just got his number, and he doesn't do this anymore. He told me. This was like multiple years ago, where I just got his number, called him up, introduced myself, and said, Sheikh, can I recite? And he said, sure.
MashaAllah.
But he doesn't do that anymore. I asked him, because I have 2 ijazas from him. When I went to go for the second ijaza in Hafs, he said, brother, I don't do this anymore, but I will do it for you.
MashaAllah.
And alhamdulillah, I was able to recite to him. He gave me ijaza in Hafs, in Tariq al-Shatibiya, Tariq al-Misbah, and also gave me ijaza in the Jazariya, Tuhfat al-Atfal. And I'm like in constant contact with Sheikh Walid. It's such an honor to be in contact with him, because like it's so interesting. Like I'll be on like Twitter and I'll see that he's in like Malaysia. But this was before, like he's in Malaysia or something. And then I'll text him and then he'll respond.
MashaAllah.
And he tells me, look, you can call me, text me, but I prefer you text me. Sometimes I text him, then he calls me to talk to me. Like if I have a question and it's a long response, he'll just call me to talk. That's just a very like from the fadl of Allah that I'm connected to him in the way that I am. He always just is willing to help me, or like to give me time. At any time, like, yeah, I mean, there's so much to say, but I continue to just benefit from Sheikh Walid and to stay in contact with him. He's such a giant and he's so humble. Like I learned humility from him. It was just he doesn't. I mean, he's Sheikh Walid, Sheikh al-Qur'an of America. When you sit with him, Allah Ta'ala knows the hearts, right? But you feel like he has no ego.
MashaAllah.
He doesn't think that he's a Sheikh al-Qur'an, right? And the fact that like the way that he just shows me the respect that he does, and like I mean, I'm just like humbled at like the time that he just gives me. So I was able to recite to him, and then I was able to recite to Sheikh al-Qur'an of Egypt. I was able to get in contact with him, recite to him for the Shahada of Husn al-Tilawa, and he was also like so humble. Sheikh معصراوي, subhanallah. Like when I met Sheikh معصراوي, he reminded me of like the Qur'an from the books. When you read about the humility of the Qur'an in the books, he reminded me of that.
MashaAllah.
I was just like mesmerized by him. And not just that, by his expertise in the field. When we were sitting with him, we studied the Khaqaniya and the Nuniyat al-Sakhawi, two poems on Tajweed. And he wanted to quote a line from the Shatibiya. He probably read 20 to 25 lines of the Shatibiya like water before he got to the line that he wanted to quote.
MashaAllah.
Just like I was like, wow, that's really impressive.
MashaAllah.
And I was able to recite to Sheikh Mahmoud Akkawi, the Sheikh al-Qur'an of Beirut. He visited Chicago. He also gave me some of his time. I've wanted to go to Beirut to continue to reciting to him, but right now it's difficult.
Yeah.
But I have a ijaza with him that I'm starting, and he was one of those qurra who I would see him on YouTube, like judging competitions, and whenever he's a judge in the competition, he's the most tough.
MashaAllah.
If he's judging your competition, you're in bad luck. I mean, it's bad luck for you, because he's gonna make it a tough day.
He's gonna lay it down.
The way that he hears things and the way that he, like, the level of corrections he can give is just he's very precise, right?
MashaAllah.
So I thought to myself, okay, he's my test. Like, this is my own test to see where I'm at. Like, I want to see what he says about my recitation.
Yeah.
For myself, I don't care about. I want to know where I'm at. And so I was able to recite to him. I was able to spend like private time with him, one-on-one with him. I have like his contact information. So, and alhamdulillah, from the fadl of like after reciting to him, and he complimented like my recitation. It was like, okay, wow, like this big sheikh is like, it was just, so to meet these qurra is just like from the fadl of Allah, honestly. It's just like from the fadl of Allah to be able to meet them, to sit with them. Because my passion from the time that I, made that intention to starting my hifz, and obviously I didn't spend enough time on like my teacher, Hafiz Ali. He was one of the, if not the most greatest influence on me.
MashaAllah.
He was the most, the greatest influence, because he taught me that memorization of Quran is not just about memorizing, but it's about being a good Muslim. It's about being sincere to the Quran, and it's about like pleasing Allah. I learned, and everyone who sits with him will tell you the same thing. So like his love for the Quran, like he has a very intense and tremendous love for the Quran. I kind of like took from him. All right, and I've benefited a lot from his connections that he's made, and he's made connections from his teachers making those connections for him as well. That's just how this field works. And so like from it's just like, you know, you go slowly and Allah Ta'ala just opens up doors, and if you're sincere, you'll be able to recite and you'll be able to benefit. And my goal is just to be sincere with the Quran. Like if you ask me right now where my recitation is, I'll tell you my recitation is not good. Like I don't think I have good tajweed. I mean, I don't think I'm at like a high level. I need to get better. Like that's what I've learned from sitting with like these, from sitting with these shayukh, that you just need to always be sincere to the Quran and continue working. You have to just recite a lot. All of the books that tajweed say kathratu tilawa, just recite a lot.
MashaAllah.
And that's how you get better. And by sitting in the suhbah of the shayukh, you just build this love for the Quran. And I owe that a lot of it to my teacher Hafiz Ali, and obviously to the teachers themselves, who the other teachers I was able to get connected with. Again, some of these teachers I got connected from Sheikh Hafiz Ali. Some of them I was able to just call them up and just get their number and just recite to them. One of the greatest influences is Sheikh Abdul Aziz Yunus Sood. Sheikh Abdul Aziz Yunus Sood is the son of Sheikh Abdul Aziz Yunus Sood. Sheikh Abdul Aziz Yunus Sood is like one of the biggest qurra of our generation, like the luminaries. He was like the Shaykh al-Qurra, the Grand Mufti, and the Shaykh of Tasawwuf at the same time.
MashaAllah.
And he had ijazah in, I mean, his story is amazing. He was able to get ijazah in the 14 qira'at from Shaykh Dabba', who was the Shaykh al-Qurra of Egypt in 14 days.
Allahu Akbar.
Or sorry, 17 days.
MashaAllah.
And I heard this directly from his son. His son was in Syria. He had to move to Turkey. I got his number, and coincidentally, when I got his number, he had just moved to Montreal. So
wow,
I flew to Montreal to go, and I spent like 1 day in his, 1 week in his like with him. I just coordinated with him, and he said, "Okay, just get a hotel that's very nearby." I said, "Okay, fine." So I just got the closest hotel to his house, and I spent the whole day with him. I would recite day and night, and I learned like the adab of Quran from him, and like the sincerity of Quran from him. Imagine what he took from his father. The spirituality I felt was ingrained within his blood. I mean, I can't say enough about Sheikh Mubashir bin Abdul Aziz in Sudan. He taught me, like, when I would recite to him, he would obviously he wouldn't give me points on tajweed, but there came a point where I was just reciting, and we would recite, and he would never say recite this much or that much. He just says recite, and when we get tired, we'll stop. That's how Quran works.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah.
Recite, you get tired, you stop. You don't keep going. I'm not going to tell you recite 1 juz or 2 juz. If you recite 1 juz and you can do that, okay, great. But if I get tired after half yours, I'm going to stop you. He didn't say that, but that's what happened. Like I would recite sometimes like a quarter juz, and he'd look at me and say, Sadaqallahu al-Azim. That's what he would do.
Yeah.
And you're like, mashallah. And then sometimes I recite 2 juz, and then he says a juz and a half. And so I learned the adab of Quran from him. And then like these, like just his spirituality, I can't tell you, like, so just being in his presence helped me understand what it means to be from the Ahlul Quran, from like the people of the Quran, and to be sincere with the Quran. And then I wanted to just start learning the qira'at, and it was difficult for me to travel at that point because I was now married with kids. So I found Sheikh Uthman in Canada, so I recited the qira'at to him. But I wanted to, Allah Ta'ala reward him, I benefited him definitely, mashallah. very qualified. He's been teaching Qur'an
MashaAllah.
for many years. I wanted to, however, just master it more. Because I've studied like the methodology of learning the qira'at, and everyone learns all of like the world-renowned qurra, or those who are experts in the field. They learn the qira'at multiple times, not just like, meaning they don't just do one khatma and that's it.
Yeah.
They do multiple recitations for the qira'at. And there's one way that's called jama'a, which is where you do one khatma for all the qira'at. And then there's another way which is called ifrad, where you do a khatma for each qira'ah individually, right? Now, therefore, by the end of it, you've done like 10 to 15 khatmas for the qira'at. So, and all of the famous qurra, like the experts in the field, they do jama' and they do ifrad.
MashaAllah.
Right? So jama' was good because I learned a lot from it, but I realized that if I really want to like become an expert, I have to do ifrad. So, alhamdulillah, from the fadl of Allah, I've done ifrad for the qira'at. So, I mean, for me, the qira'at is a journey that I don't want to stop. Because they say, al-qira'atu idha turikat dhahabat. The qira'at, when you stop interacting with it, either from reciting it or teaching it, it'll leave you. So, I'm continuing to recite to my teacher in Egypt. I got, alhamdulillah, I have a teacher who I recite to in Egypt, and I was actually supposed to go there this past summer, but it didn't work out. So I plan to go next summer. I plan to go sometime in the future, inshallah. I'll make it easy. And recite the qira'at, and to further my studies in the qira'at, or to further my I guess like I don't want to use the word expertise because I'm not an expert, right? Just to further my experience and becoming more learned in the qira'at. And inshallah, at Darul Qasim, I'll be beginning, inshallah, to teach the qira'at next semester.
Oh, mashallah.
So I plan to, inshallah, teach it and then continue to recite. That's my goal.
Never stop reciting, basically.
I don't want to stop reciting. I mean, especially when I'm teaching.
MashaAllah.
Especially when I'm starting to teach in the beginning, I want to have someone who can I can take as a supervisor. You know what I'm saying? And I talked to Sheikh وليد about this as well. Given the qira'at, what methodology should I use? Yeah, and one of the great resources that I've been in touch with is Sheikh Abdullah Al-Jarullah from Madinah Munawwara, like a world-renowned sheikh in Medina who is the epitome of humility. Like he learned about us. I was introduced to him from Hafiz Ali, and Hafiz Ali said some good things. And so when I came to meet him, he was like, "You're the one who teaches Quran in America. You're the one who has these students." I'm like, "What did he say to you?" What did Hafiz Ali say to you?
Yeah, mashallah.
So I'm like, I guess, yeah. He's like, okay, mashallah. So I recite to him, and my goal is not just to recite for ijazah. My goal is to be connected to these people.
MashaAllah, mashallah.
Ijazah is not the goal.
Yeah.
You can have ijazah, that doesn't mean recitation is perfect. You can have ijazah, that doesn't mean you're qualified. But to me, ijazah is not the goal. It's like, when I would train in jiu-jitsu, my coach and trainer, he would say, these belts are not the goal. They're just a mark of they're just accomplishment that you achieve on the journey of becoming an expert. Like, that's a good quote. So like, that's what the ijazat are. It's like you're on the journey of becoming an expert, right? And these are just accolades that you achieve. And it's not just, the goal isn't to even be expert. The goal is to be sincere, to please Allah, right? So on your journey of being sincere with the Quran, you're going to obtain accolades, you're going to obtain achievements from the fadl of Allah. And there's a lot of barakah in sanad, a lot of barakah in being connected to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in that way. But yeah, and I remember when I was going to recite to Sheikh وليد, when I was about to get the ijazah, I was talking to Hafiz Ali, because me and Hafiz Ali, we're always in contact. Like I was just talking to him a couple of days ago. Alhamdulillah. And he was telling me, just reminding me that, listen, your goal is not to get ijazah from Sheikh وليد. Your goal is to be connected to him.
MashaAllah.
Right. So, and that's how you have to see like your connection with these teachers, to be connected with them. It's not just about ijazah, okay, bye.
Yeah.
Because there's people who do that. Right? They go to the shuyukh only for ijazah and they never talk to them again. They never see them again. Shaykh Kareem talks about that. Like, and recently, Shaykh Abdullah Al-Jarullah, I'm on a WhatsApp group with him and like his students and other teachers, and they were having a conversation about this, about loyalty to your teacher. And he was telling me about his teacher, Sheikh Ibrahim Akhdar, دعوة بركاته from Medina Munawwarah, who's a Shaykh al-Qur'an of Medina. And he was saying, he's a student of Shaykh Ibrahim Akhdar, and he's also a student of many, many great shuyukh. He was saying he saw one of the students of Shaykh Ibrahim Akhdar like talking to him, keeping in touch with him, and just interacting with a certain way, which shows loyalty. And he was saying to us, I mean, he's our teacher, and he's telling us, I thought to myself, lately, like, if only I had this level of wafa, right? It's like you have a lot of wafa. We would have our class, and he would bring Shaykh Ibrahim to come teach us, right? So we all know, like, Shaykh Abdullah is like the Shaykh, but he also wants you to know that his teacher, Shaykh Ibrahim.
MashaAllah.
So, like, it's just, to be connected to these qurra and to be connected to like the silsila of qurra and of Ahlul Quran is just a blessing. And I believe everyone can do it.
MashaAllah.
Like, my thing is, if I've done something, anyone can do it. Like, there's nothing special about me. I'm nothing, right? If Allah Ta'ala, like, and I there's so much more for me to achieve. There's so much more for me to go in my journey with the Quran. But Allah Ta'ala will open up doors for everyone as long as they're sincere.
Inshallah.
You want to be, and that's my goal. My goal is to be from Ahlul Quran. That's what I like. When the teachers, Shaykh Kareem, he asked me when I first met him, like, what is your goal? Like, why do you want to recite to me? And there's a reason why they do that. They want to make sure that you're sincere, and there's a whole like topic. There's a whole like discussion in the books of qira'at that if a person is insincere, should you continue to teach them? And Ibn al-Jazari in his Munjid al-Muqri'in, he says you should, because there are many salaf who say تعلمنا العلم لغير الله فأبى أن يكون إلا لله, that we began our journey of learning knowledge insincere, but at the end we all were sincere in trying to do this for Allah Ta'ala. Yeah. So he says you don't reject someone for insincerity. Eventually they're going to become sincere, but some still ask this question. So I told him, I said to him, I want to improve my recitation. I want to be from the Ahlul Quran, and I want to meet you. Yeah, alhamdulillah.
MashaAllah.
So, I mean, there's a lot of benefit in being connected to your teachers, to stay connected with them, and to just always see yourself as a student. That's very important, to always see yourself as a student.
MashaAllah, man. That's amazing, man. I just wanted to wrap up here. You're currently teaching at Darul Qasim. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got started over there and what you're currently teaching? I know you already hinted, or you told us that you're going to be teaching different qira'at in the next semester.
I began at Darul Qasim first as a student. We came to Sheikh Amin to further our studies. And eventually, Sheikh Amin asked me to start teaching a few classes. Eventually, that led to him asking me to be there full time. So it was like, a step-by-step type thing. And when I was at Darul Qasim, like I began teaching at Darul Qasim when they were in like that blue building, the 999 building. And then we moved into the new facility where in the beginning there weren't that many students. But I always felt that Darul Qasim is special, and that it's going to have a great impact on Muslims in America. And Sheikh Amin has great foresight. And I felt at that point, even when I was an imam and I was studying, and he would ask me to teach a few classes here and there, I felt I want to be connected to Darul Qasim because there's a lot of benefit that people will get from Darul Qasim, and I just want to be connected to that. I want to be able to be connected to something that's going to benefit people and Muslims at large in America. And I had confidence in like Sheikh Amin knowing how to do that and just in his vision. So when he asked me to be there full time, it was like to me a no-brainer, inshallah, so I accepted that. And in the beginning, there weren't that many students, but I knew, okay, I would walk in the beginning. There were classes with only one student, two students, and I thought to myself, there's gonna come a day very soon where these classes are gonna be filled. And that came a lot sooner than we thought.
MashaAllah.
Like from that point that we first moved in, like 2 years later, now Darul Qasim, this last semester we had to reject students because with the social distancing that was in place for on-site learning, they just had to reject like students because it was at capacity for the amount of students they were allowed to have. And so now at Darul Qasim, the beautiful thing about Darul Qasim is that Sheikh Amin always wants every faculty member to recognize that as a student of knowledge, like you have to always want to learn more. And that's why the Darul Qasim, the motto or slogan is in the quest for more knowledge.
MashaAllah.
And Sheikh Amin is the epitome of that. Sheikh Amin always like it's very clear he himself is also trying to learn more, and he always wants the faculty to benefit from one another. So if there's a faculty member that has an expertise that another faculty member doesn't, you should benefit from that faculty member. So when we started the Ijazat program, he said your first students will be the faculty. So the first students who began reciting to me were the faculty, and we would learn from each other. Mawlana Bilal was already my teacher. I began studying more from Mawlana Bilal. Dr. Muhammad, everyone studying from Dr. Muhammad. Everyone benefits from one another. And it's just an amazing environment to be in, like that, when everyone is trying to benefit from one another.
Yeah.
Like you're studying something and you don't understand something. Okay, you can ask someone else. They're studying something they don't understand. They can ask you. Like,
MashaAllah.
Mawlana Kamal, he wants to learn something. He wants to know something about the qira'at. He'll come and we'll talk. If I want to know something a little bit further in tafsir, I'll go talk to Mawlana Kamal.
Yeah.
And we want to know something in hadith, Mawlana Bilal. Right? So we want to know something in aqidah. We go to Dr. Muhammad. We want to know something in fiqh, Mufti Hisham.
MashaAllah. MashaAllah.
Arabic, there's like something very difficult in Arabic, like this poem or whatever. You go to Dr. Shukri.
MashaAllah. MashaAllah.
I feel it from the Fadl of Allah that it's a blessing for me to be connected to the Qasim. And so I currently teach advanced Arabic. I teach Sharh Qatil al-Nada. I was teaching Aqidah, but I took another book. I'm teaching Ulum al-Quran. I'm teaching Tafsir Jalalain. I'm teaching Tajweed, Tuhfatul Atfal, Jazariya. Then we have the Ijazah course as well. Inshallah, we'll be beginning the Qira'at course. That's basically what my teaching revolves around.
Nice, mashallah. Do you have any future plans for your studies and or for teaching?
For teaching, the goal is always so there's always like different courses that you're designing. So currently I'm in the process of designing a course. And when you design a course, you're going to learn a lot more.
Yeah.
And when it comes to teaching, there's you teach certain books, and there's always other books that you'll teach that you haven't taught, to have experience in that, to benefit from that, and also inshallah to be benefit to the students. So the teaching goals are always there. You're always learning from some of the other faculty. Like Sheikh Amin, as I mentioned, always wants the faculty to continue learning. So we have, like in the summer, we have classes where all the faculty is learning from a great expert in some field, right? So this past summer we were learning from Dr. Isam, who is teaching us in a different manner. Like we take up subjects, we present, and then he tries to critique, and then we respond. It's a way to like develop your critical thinking, like to further yourself in the particular field that you're in.
MashaAllah.
So we're doing that. So that's always there, which is part of teaching and learning. So for me, for learning as well, along with what the faculty at Darul Qasim already does, my goal is to continue to recites the qira'at, and also inshallah to begin to teach the qira'at as well. But I hope to be connected to the qira'at for a very long time, inshallah. My goals, my current goal for the qira'at, even at where I am, like I won't reach what the goals that I've set for myself for another 5 years.
Subhanallah.
Like it'll take another 5 years for me to accomplish like basically everything that I set out to do. And even then, you're not really done, because then you have to
there's new
know
goals.
it better. Yeah, you just have to learn it better.
MashaAllah.
And there's the science of qira'at is an ocean. Subhanallah. Yeah, there's more as well. There's a lot more. So it's an ocean. It's there's always more to learn. Yeah.
MashaAllah, man. Jazakallah khairan for coming out. Again, I apologize. You thought it was virtual, but it's not. May Allah reward you. May Allah Ta'ala accept all your noble efforts, your teaching. May Allah Ta'ala bless your family. MashaAllah, the sacrifices your parents made. And, may Allah Ta'ala bless every endeavor that you seek and that you go towards in that path, inshallah.
Ameen. Jazakumullah khairan.
Wa iyaakum.